Hey, why does Spider-Man care about college?
What?
I feel like every piece of Spider-Man fiction partially revolves around his pursuits in the educational system. Like, you're already a superhero. Your life is set.
Well, no, he's...
Who gives a crap with getting a degree at that point?
Two things. Number one, the original story for Spider-Man, he is a genius because he invents his own web fluids and stuff. Yeah. So that's
still there.
So he's a physics student. He's a gifted student.
No, I get that much, but
and also the reason everybody likes Spider-Man and doesn't like any other superhero is because they're all rich or gods, and he's the only one that's a poor person. Because the other half of Spider-Man is Peter Parker not being able to afford his rent and shit.
I mean, in the MCU stuff, like he's already shacking up with Tony Stark. So,
well, that was just creative liberties so that Disney didn't have to deal with the realities of being poor.
Also, as a interesting opening question, is this like your set list for open mic? What's the deal with Spider-Man?
Yeah, he's doing his type 5.
Yeah, that's it. It's like next week it'll be about airline food. Yeah.
Well, all right, guys.
That was like a good Seinfeld intro.
Yeah,
like, where it's like it's just his set list at the beginning.
Well, I'll just put the Seinfeld intro for the intro music to this episode.
So John Romero, he's about to make us his bitch, which means it could only be time for one thing: to grab our buddy Superfly and talk about the colossal wet turd that was 2000's Diakatana, an ambitious sci-fi first-person shooter developed from gaming royalty with a massive budget behind it to boot. So what the fuck happened then? How in the world did a project born out of the likes of Wolfenstein, Doom, and Quake end up making the list of some of the most notorious failures ever to grace the medium? Was it mismanagement? Was it hubris? Was it poor PR? Turns out it was all three.
Yeah,
but this story goes far deeper than just that. And while its lack of impact may have led to it being mostly forgotten today, we're here to give you the full scoop on the downfall of an industry giant who unfortunately was never able to recover to his past glory. A glory that even now continues to endlessly inspire new works and fresh faces to join the field. It's just too bad this title will forever remain a black mark on a legacy, as well as a shining example of when high expectations result in crushing disappointment. This is Hot Button. I'm Randall Beatrice, here with Austin Blakesley.
Sayonara.
And Matt Nadevu.
Hello.
I shouldn't have said crushing disappointment and then say the name of our show. That was probably bad. Right?
It's time for crushing disappointment. This is Hot Button.
Who's ready to shoot some cyber frogs?
Oh, yeah.
I don't actually want to play the game. If that's what you're asking.
Yeah, and I should say for those referential gags, by the way, that we had direct hands-on experience with this, and we'll get to that in a bit.
Oh, yeah?
Don't you worry.
Yes. Forever enshrined in my collection now, too.
Yeah, you get to look out your shelf every day and be proud.
And be proud of it, yeah, of course. I mean, listen, there's a lot of stinkers in that collection, so, you know.
We knew what we were getting into.
Yeah.
So if you're younger than us or haven't listened to a couple of the previous Hot Buttons where he popped in, you might not entirely be familiar with who exactly John Romero is and why he was so important. Is so important. Yeah, sounds mean. Just a quick summary. Otherwise, this would spawn a whole series. He was a designer and a programmer, of course, born in Colorado back in 1967. He discovered a passion for games after playing classics such as Space Invaders and Pac-Man. The love only grew bigger when he acquired an Apple II in 1980 and began coding himself. His first non-published piece was a clone of Taito's Crazy Climber. However, he didn't hit the level of actual distribution until 4 years later in 1984 with Scout Search, a top-down action maze game where you are tasked with gathering all of your Cub Scouts to prevent a hungry grizzly bear from eating them. As you can see, he always had that wry sense of humor about him. But yeah, it was released and promoted through the popular Insider with a C magazine that June, the dev being presented as Capital Ideas Software, his initial company's debut. It did well enough to allow him to truck on with more projects. 1987 was a particularly productive 12 months for him, with 10 titles alone hitting the market, each for the Apple II, and several even gaining the notoriety enthusiasts started to become drawn to his name. He made the cover of the December issue of Nibble that winter, another tech zine. A few of his earlier works then saw release that didn't before, now that he was out there, so that was cool. Soon he saw employment at Origin Systems, a Texas-based studio helmed by Richard Garriott, the creator of Ultima and producer of Wing Commander. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There he met Paul Norath. Yeah.
Richard Garriott, Lord British.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just say as an aside, reading about Ultima, it's it kind of feels like
That's like it's like a progenitor game.
Yes,
isn't it, right?
I was gonna
Like,
say it kind of feels like what must have been like to be like medieval and reading about the Roman Empire of like there's just this entire series that rose and fall before like even like PCs were like a lot of modern games are coming out. It's like it survived. It was built, rose, and like died like all within the 80s to 95.
I know there's tons of sequel. Yeah, it's like I don't know if there's any version of it that's still alive or
it really
Ultima Online.
Yeah,
there's still a percentage of people out there on EverQuest. Like,
because it's like you think about it, it's just like Ultima. It's like it was big, but it's like you think about like gaming history, and you're like, when was this big? And it's like, oh, like before everything else,
you were conscious of it.
Yeah, before everything else was big. It's like it was already dead by the time things were like getting big.
That was like the thing where you hear about Ultima and you're like, oh, I've never heard of that before, and then you hear about Ultima 8 and you're like, wait.
What? Yeah.
They made 8 of these?
Not only that, then there's the Stygian Abyss and Ultima Underworld, that which was and then Ultima Online. It's like, when did this all come out?
Yeah.
And it was probably more condensed roadmap back then. But so he met Paul Neurath while assisting with development on the flight sim Space Rogue. Paul quickly noticed Romero's talent and asked him to tag up in the formation of Blue Sky, better known down the road as Looking Glass Technologies, the folks who brought you System Shock and Thief. Except he rejected the offer and left Origin to co-found Inside Out Software. They primarily were assigned Commodore ports, Might and Magic and the like. Except his stay there wasn't long, as he left in 1991 to help form Ideas from the Deep, or you'd recognize them today as id fucking Software.
Yeah, which is also a great name. I just realized for any sort of brand, like just like indulge, like it is like like just indulgence, and it's like it's a good name for a brand, especially his brand. Yeah.
Even now. Yeah. So they were out of Richardson, again in the Lone Star State. The squad consisted of 4 members: the legendary John Carmack, Tom Hall, artist Adrian Carmack, no relation, and our boy Romero. Yeah. So just to clarify, we've got 2 Johns, 2 Carmacks, none related. It's fucking writing this was a little bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
So how did this crew come to be? Well, 2 years prior in '89, John Romero moved to Louisiana to perform for the group Soft Disc, who specialized in physical diskettes of the mostly digital magazine Big Blue Disc. There's too many uses of the word disc in that sentence. And blue is a common motif. I don't. In 1990, he opened the Gamer's Edge division for PC games, hired Carmack 1 onto the team to port his freelancing in Kansas City, recruited Carmack 2 from the art department, and persuaded Hall to roll in during the wee hours of the night for his aid in any extra design.
Little side note, I think the blue motif is a lot of software had blue in it because of IBM.
Oh,
that actually makes sense. Yeah,
IBM was their logo was blue. I think they might have been called sense. Big Blue.
Big Blue, yeah. I mean, they call Oracle Big Red, which sounds like they just IBM.
That's a gum.
What, Big Red?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there it was, a bunch of pals with Romero as the Wrangler, a Wrangler with a love of the occult. Like I love it. It's like completely unironic, just genuine fascination with the devil. I approve. So they bounced out shortly after. As I said, this is the part where I'm going to fast forward a little, because like pretty much every entry in id's monumental 90s catalog would be like its own episode.
Yeah.
Just list them off.
Yeah, I was more just kind of just aiming to do a snappy bio of John Romero's origins. But because you know the tale. To put it mildly, our guy and his fellow compatriots were responsible for many of gaming's major milestones in the shooter space. And Commander Keen, I guess.
Yeah.
The side-scroller. A title that, interestingly enough, spawned out of a beta build for a reimagining of the NES masterpiece Super Mario Bros. 3 for home computers, an idea that was ultimately declined by Nintendo and, as of recently, had their files leaked online. From the footage seen, it's fairly easy to see why it was turned down. Most commercial hardware back then in 1990 didn't exactly have the strength to run that game at the tight speed players were familiar with.
Oh, wow.
Like, have you ever heard of Super Mario Brothers... Oh, not Deluxe. What's it called? The PC one that came out in the 80s by Hudson. And it can't even scroll the screen.
Yeah.
Like, it has to it'll go black, and then You know,
Wait,
like
is this a console or a game?
no, this is
a port of Mario with a screen.
Super Mario Brothers 1 on PC.
Really?
Yeah.
No joke.
It's
Mhm.
terrible.
It's fascinating, but yeah, it's
Also,
awful.
side note,
Yeah.
Commander Keen, was that before the original Duke Nukem?
I believe so.
Because it would be weird if
Maybe
if id made turned Mario into Commander Keen,
Yeah.
and then that inspired Duke Nukem and Jazz Jackrabbit,
yeah.
because then that means that Mario technically spawned id Software, 3D Realms, and Epic.
Yeah, that's
That's a-
very possible.
And actually, so that means did it also spawn Postal by any chance?
no,
No.
that
Which
was
is-
Running with Scissors.
That was
who I do want to
which
cover.
which is
Yeah.
interesting because
Great name for a company.
yeah, running with there's a because
Fits them well.
when you guys got me Postal 4, that got off Postal 4.
Oh,
So
God, yeah.
a lot of Commander Keen still lives on in a lot of id-born games in the form of like Easter eggs or
Yes,
like
yeah,
artwork.
yeah.
Because in the first Doom
They canceled
reboot,
that remake.
in the first Doom reboot, you can find there's an enemy or a character from the Dope Fish, which is just it's a fish. It's a fish with
I
big
found one.
buck
I
teeth.
found one by accident. I was like, "What the fuck is that?"
And
It
it's
doesn't
like-
look like anything else in the game.
And I found it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's in the Doom reboot. I found that one, but there's a graffiti of it in Postal 4 in the sewers, and I'm just like, how is this? How I was like, is this just a?
I guess
an
they're just doing
homage?
their own callback.
homage.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a call. Yeah, it's a callback, but it's like that's like I guess that's how Commander Keen lives on. They just put it in an
It's
Easter
the only way he
egg.
can live on.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Also, Commander Keen. I always thought it was like some weird Nintendo mascot that died out.
It looks like a cereal box game or
Yeah.
You're
something.
thinking of Captain N.
Yeah,
Oh, that's who I get it mixed
Yeah.
up with.
Master.
Captain N.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or who's the Nintendo Power mascot? What's his name?
Kid Power.
Kid.
Is that his name?
I have
I
no
know.
like
idea.
that.
People,
can't-
I know for a while that would, like a lot of old heads were like, put him in Smash. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be pretty funny. Anyway, you then had the genre-defying Wolfenstein 3D in '92, Doom in '93, Doom 2 featuring Romero's decapitated head in '94, Quake in '96, which was actually three-dimensional and leaned heavy into multiplayer.
Yep.
And starred Trent Reznor, who was commissioned to lend his abilities for its audio. You also had the lesser discussed Heretic and Hexen with Raven
know what?
Software.
You know what?
Yeah.
I actually was going to bring that up. Is that so? There were like what? It was like 2 Heretic games and 3 Hex games. There's a lot of them in a short amount of
Yeah.
time. And
One
it's
was like a spin-off of the other.
yeah. And so I think Hexen was the sequel to Heretic. I think eventually.
Yeah, because
And
it was Hexen Beyond Heretic, or
yes, it was Hexen
Yeah.
Beyond Heretic,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like they all form like I don't know if they're connected, but it's like they form kind of a continuation. And I think it
Yeah.
started with Heretic.
And then I don't remember when Blood came out.
I have no idea what that is.
Blood's great. To state that these releases were huge for them would be an insane understatement. They sold like, mad with like just crazy with consumers, achieved acclaim with reviewers, and won numerous awards from the press. Controversies on violence were fought, Columbine, and their communities surrounding them grew and grew. Forums, fan websites, custom content. It seemed that nothing could slow down the success that they, so rightfully earned. Wolfenstein, Doom, and Quake still healthy-ish franchises even today. I guess less Quake, but Doom and Wolfenstein have been rebooted. We're in between whatever they're doing with them now. But they still end up on several all-time lists anyway. All this
Yeah.
stuff,
I was gonna say,
so that's
it's,
something.
regardless of the current health, they're still around for sure.
I love
Yeah.
those reboots.
Yeah,
But,
but
Dylan Klebold was not the only person playing Doom in the 90s.
No.
but yeah, I mean to say that Wolfenstein, Doom, and Quake, they're around because people still port those games.
I was gonna say, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't even have that in my script. But it's almost like the meme factor of
yes.
Doom running on everything keeps that game continuously alive.
in the popular consciousness.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like it's the smoke test. You can just install it. Can I get it to install it on blank?
I mean, recently they got it to run on bacteria. Did
Yep.
you see
Yeah,
that?
I saw
The
that.
fuck?
Yeah, yes, which is
And a pregnancy test.
Yeah,
they got it to run on a pregnancy test.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love it. Focusing on the role of our protagonist for the topic, he wrote much of the engine and tools that these all used, including Doom ED and Quake ED, their level editors, the Duongo client for online matches, iGrab for assets and converting them into .wad files, I haven't heard that term in a minute. Yeah.
The WADs.
Yeah.
Hold on, pause for a second. I
Yeah.
need to return this. Are you telling me that a modern pregnancy test has more compute power than a computer from 1990?
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
It's like I was less surprised that they did it, and more the fact that it's like, what is in those pregnancy
Hey, think about the
tests?
computers that got us to the moon compared to.
Yeah.
No,
No. There's more power in your cell phone.
Yeah. Separate of this, he built the installers and setup program for configuring. Dude knew his shit, and it's tough to say where we'd be without those necessary elements. Meanwhile, the money was hot, the scores were high, sales were kicking. However, it wasn't purely all joyful behind the scenes. During development of Quake, in which Romero was lead director on, he and Carmack supposedly butted heads over everything from the company's current docket to its future, the latter claiming that progress was being halted during the final stages of the expense of the former's demanding faithfulness to vision without fair compromise. Also, that his output wasn't what it once was compared to other employees there. Not to mention the fact that he was splitting his dedication with Raven on the aforementioned Hexen.
Yeah.
Despite Romero loosening on his creative control, tensions weren't resolved, and upon Quake landing on store shelves in 1996, he was forced to resign.
He was forced to resign. Okay.
Yeah, and I think even now, like today, that friendship is still.
I feel like
rocky,
I
but
wonder
don't
if
know.
it's like a kind of a Jobs and Wozniak thing. Like it's like up until the end, Wozniak said he was like, you were still close, even though they were like,
Yeah,
you know,
there has to still be a mutual respect. I mean,
There's a very common story.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like Jobs and Wozniak, Carmack and Romero, Eastman and Laird is another one.
yeah.
Where
this
they
does seem
didn't
nice.
the guys that made Ninja Turtles, they didn't talk
Gotcha.
after Ninja Turtles like hit it big and got sold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They like didn't talk for like 25 years.
this is strange.
but they never collaborated like again. In the
This is
same
more of a historic throwback. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. John Adams was a Federalist. Jefferson was a Southern Democrat, and they were bitter fucking rivals.
Yeah.
But later in life, once they both left politics, they actually became very good friends. Died on the same day,
Wow.
July
That's
4th.
cute.
July 4th.
Wait, end on July 4th?
1926, 50 years exactly
They
after
died so freedom could be born.
But yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's like love is just the opposite, so opposite side of the coin
Oh
of
yeah,
hate,
of
where
hate.
it's just
Good.
like you
it's
can,
no, it's not right. The opposite of love is disinterest.
well, that's it. It's just like
Yeah.
love and hate are very close.
Yeah.
The opposite is
Oh,
apathy.
yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
But it's like, you can hate a person a lot, but that means you know him pretty well.
Yeah,
and
you're
it's
thinking
like,
about him.
you're thinking about him.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
The problems between the two were also exacerbated by their distinct clash of personalities, or you could argue, ego. See, Romero had somewhat of a rock star persona in the biz. He frequently took interviews and did photo ops, sporting his long black hair and gothy attire. Often he spoke at events, shook hands, bought expensive cars, and he looked cool doing it. On the opposite side, Carmack was more comfortable in the trenches. Gameplay was what mattered most to him, not the pageantry. A notion I absolutely understand, although I don't necessarily agree with his pushing aside of the thought-provoking depth that games can for sure provide, and nor did Tom Hall, who wished to further explore lore in their products. According to the book Masters of Doom by David Kushner, Mack was heard exclaiming that, the quote, "Story in a game is like story in a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not important." And obviously neither are true, but it especially hurt Hall's feelings considering he was the one who was writing Doom's narrative universe.
Right, yeah.
That quote also came up in our Duke Nukem episode.
Oh, did it?
Because I believe Tom
Makes
Hall worked on Duke Nukem Forever for a while.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Regardless, the partial...
Because Tom Hall was the guy that wrote the story to Doom.
I bet
Yeah.
he had a
Quake.
good time with that.
Yeah.
Though, funnily enough, he must have taken like the porn thing seriously because there's,
Yeah,
it's like
I
he's
w-
like fine.
I wonder how he feels about like Doom's like I love the way the Doom reboot like presents its story because it's
Yeah.
like your main character is actively like getting annoyed by it.
Yeah.
which is great.
I was gonna say it's
You're
like
just punching computers in the middle of people monologuing to you and telling you what to do, and
that's-
then you're
I
just-
was gonna say it's like I don't know, maybe he was Romero was right because dude Doom Eternal invented all that bizarre lore.
that
and
got
you
to be too much.
and it's like you read it, it's like who asked for this?
Yeah.
And it's like it's like the whole point
That
of the...
broke the sin for me because they had him speak.
And also, it was like, I agree that it's like,
don't make Doom guy talk.
There was kind of a cheeky
Don't give him a
commentary on games when you just punch the monitor and just kind of...
It was.
And you just start shooting. It's like, I get it.
But this
Okay,
this
clever.
was like, the 90s, the mid-90s where people are still figuring out what games are capable of.
Yeah.
But, and we love stories in games, but we also know how, like, when they're appropriate and when you need to, like,
when you need to tone
pace
it back.
it. Exactly. Regardless, the partnership ceased, and this, my friends, is where Ion Storm enters the fray. Finally to be set free from the man. It's an oversight, So Romero packed his capital in bags, but not before taking his buddy Hall with, who was actively working on another hot button topic, the OG Prey.
Right, that's where he came up.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
wait a second. And this was... Ion Storm was formed, what year did you say?
Hold on. I think this is 95.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Prey was in the works for a long time.
It sure was.
Wow.
It wasn't the Duke Nukem episode, it was the Prey episode where Tom Hall came up. Okay.
Yeah. Or actually, this might be 96, because we'll get to it in a moment around...
I'm just saying,
this is going to share...
I'm just saying, Prey came out in
window.
like, what, 05? 06?
Yeah. 05,
Listen
06,
to our episode
We
on
did that.
Prey for more information on how troubled the development of that game was.
See, I was setting it up. I was alley-ooping it to you.
Yep.
Just be like, tell me more about this long development time.
So they relocated to Dallas. By that November 15th, just months later, Ion Storm LP was established. And that's a hell of a fast turnaround, but by no means a cheap one. They spared no expense here. The pair, along with Todd Porter and Jerry O'Flaherty, that sounds very Irish.
What nationality do you think he is?
Yeah.
Norwegian.
Yeah, okay.
Decided that the perfect spot for their corporate headquarters should be an unleased 22,000 square foot penthouse suite on the 54th story of the Chase Tower in the downtown metro area.
Is this in Texas?
Dallas.
Yeah. I knew that they're all from Texas.
And why stop there? They
Chase Tower.
proceeded then to spend lavishly on office decor and their facilities. That totaled over $2 million. A foolish tactic in the vein of what you'd see during the dot-com burst, where businesses would attempt to give clients and the public the appearance of being, successful, larger than they are,
Yeah. Good thing that ended.
A firm who typically specialized in designing recording studios, Ross Berger, I don't know, handled the interiors. There was a 10-foot wide Ion Storm logo in the lobby that sat atop of their terrazzo floor and matching elevator doors. I had to look this up. Terrazzo is made from marble, quartz, granite, glass.
Is it terrazzo?
Terrazzo.
Terrazzo,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's hella pricey.
You don't say. Also,
it's Italian. They have to fly it in from Rome.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
okay. What do you call it?
They got it here by boat. How else would it come?
Yeah. Oh god.
That's the joke I was referencing.
Yeah, it came here by boat from Rome. How else would it?
How else would it get here?
Yeah. So wait. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're getting to the juicy part of the story because up until this point, it's just like you immediately know the red flags when it's like you realize that the company is focusing more on the flashiness over the substance, and it's like
Spending that Doom money.
it's like you're just spending the money to make it look good, and it's like okay, now we're getting to the fun part because it's like now you're just like
Well, that was the funny.
these people are spending cash they will not have.
I could find little like materials out there about their hirees.
Yeah.
More than just but this was all out there. Like you said, they'll just
The appearance as opposed to the actual development.
yeah.
Yes.
They also had beds, couches, VCRs, a massive widescreen TV, 2 telephone booths, private changing rooms complete with a shower,
with cameras in them.
Yeah, a quote unquote gaming zone with a ping pong table and 4 arcade machines. Above there was rooftop windows. Of course, that only caused issues when the sun would shine in so harshly that staff members had to cover their cubicles with black fabric so they could see their monitors.
So wait. It wasn't even just like
I digress.
It wasn't even just what do you call it? Skylights or whatever. It's like they just had
It was open. They was looking out onto the city.
Are you really telling me this company had a literal glass ceiling? That sounds like, dude. That's a greenhouse. Like, it's just like,
it is.
no one
Yeah.
thinks
I was going
that
to say, that's like a fucking oven.
Yeah, I was gonna say, dude. It's like, don't look up at the sky. You'll like burn your corneas.
And I'm sure they had their other amenities like a kitchen and all your stuff, your vending machines and all.
So, pause again, real quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Work office hammocks.
I do question whether I'm like, okay, one, obviously John Romero was probably feeling so confident.
How could you not be? You made the biggest game in the world.
Being confident in your vision is a big part about getting funding.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a big thing, but I think it's that. It's like, I bet he thought he was the shit, and investors thought he was shit because he had a track record, but also
the credentials were there.
I just realized, I'm like, where is this money coming from? We're just going into the .com bubble around this time too. And it's like people, and also Microsoft, this was right around the time that Microsoft was essentially monopolizing all of, it's like, because with Windows, Windows was coming out as the Wintel model was coming out as like the clear leader of, the home personal market. So it's like, you got Bill Gates.
The market share going.
People were looking at it, they're just like, they want the Bill Gates money. And then Romero was probably feeling like, dude, I make the best games in the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the Bill Gates of it. Yeah. Combined with the .com bubble. You see where the disaster is heading.
These dudes were making it rain left and right.
That's what I'm saying.
I think they also drove pretty, like fancy cars and shit,
dude, this is what happens when it comes to money and like investing and like the speculation mindset. It is just like, you can become manic with it and just think that like the money will never end. Yeah. And you don't realize until you see.
I don't think they thought anything would run out. So much that they opened up a branch in Austin too the following season. So they had multiple.
I'm glad everybody learned their lesson and this never happened again. That joke's gonna keep coming up.
The recent example I could think of at the time was when Epic bought the mall.
Yeah.
And they bought a shopping mall, an abandoned shopping mall, and they said, this is going to be an office, our new headquarters.
Okay.
And then the people who lived there locally in town were like, they haven't done anything. Like, they bought this massive property, started renovations, and then ran out, like a cash or whatever.
Where is that located?
I think Virginia.
Okay, never mind. There is a headquarters somewhere in Jersey. I know it's where they were gonna film part of what do you call it?
Back to the Future.
No, oh my god,
Call of Duty map.
Severance.
Oh, that's right.
They're filming season 2 of Severance, and I believe it was an old headquarters, maybe a mall.
The lab from it is an actual.
It's in PA.
Yeah, okay.
It's in PA. I got to look it up. I can't remember, but it's like you look at it and it like the building looks weird as hell. Yeah, it's I gotta look it up. Never mind. Yeah,
rules.
Yeah.
Much of the influx came in from a licensing agreement signed with Eidos Interactive for 6 delivered titles. Not only that, they tried to keep the cash flowing more by scooping up work from outside developers who were nearing the end of completion and finishing them before a competitor could. Which is a solid strat. Design is law was their slogan.
Wait, what was it?
Design is law.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah. It does sound aggressive.
It does, yeah.
Now that their environment was constructed.
Sounds like something Judge Dredd would
say.
It does, yeah.
It was time to buckle down. They hired some more talent, even pulling in another person from id Proper, their head of marketing, Mike Wilson. 3 of the 4 founders would each lead their own crew to increase effectiveness and allow that personal touch they so desired. Elsewhere, the PC shooter scene was continuing to flourish. Here you had the spiritual successors to their claims to fame killing it as well. Duke Nukem 3D, Rise of the Triad, Star Wars Dark Forces, Super 3D Noah's Ark, Jack's Quest.
Oh god, all
Shadow Warrior.
Yeah,
Shadow Warrior. That's oh god, the Doom clones were just
they were abundant.
Oh yeah.
Jack's Quest is the best one.
More and more publishers were itching for a slice of that pie because but of course they weren't the originals.
That's when they pivoted.
Yeah,
that's when they pivoted to Mist clones. No one made those in the 90s.
Yeah. Dark Force is getting re-released like this month or for a remaster.
It is getting remastered.
Yeah. What year is this?
This is 96.
Okay, so we're not quite at the Quake clones yet.
No, those will follow. Insiders soon coined our cast of Ion Storm characters as the quote Dallas Mafia. Prior to Doom taking over with its absurd amount of ports, it was normal for devs to only receive single-digit royalty percentages. Now, Buddy Wilson was negotiating 40% for their contributions and 45% for the Eidos deal.
Dude, the second you come up with flashy names for a bunch of geeky coders, it's like you just red flags immediately pop up. You're just like, these people are fucked.
You have damned them to failure.
Yeah, you have damned them to failure.
He also aimed to self-publish the in-house stuff to recoup everything spent A notion that John Carmack vehemently opposed, as his interest lay with pioneering technology over ongoing releases. Quote, the plan was for Ion to be a part of what would later become God Games, or the gathering of developers. Yet another hot button connection. So
yes.
Thanks, God Game.
Yeah.
It was a tad intimidating, but they had investments. And this was why they had the second location at the ready. Before we get to the games, though, let's break down a bit of the culture in their so-called workplace. Let me paint a picture for you. The building itself...
I'm sure it was very healthy.
The building itself had a reputation for hosting wealthy tycoon types. Yep. Next door to them was the Petroleum Club. I love this quote from Wilson. It's exactly what it sounds like. A bunch of oil money barons sitting on leather and mahogany, smoking cigars and drinking scotch. And here comes all these young, long-haired dudes in shorts and combat boots going up to the penthouse, which those guys absolutely fucking hated. It was really meant for assholes in the oil industry, but suddenly there are these new guys with Ferraris who could afford that place, end quote.
That is...
I love it.
Also, I like how it's the Petroleum Club. You know, you ask them, it's like, how much oil do you guys own? It's like, we don't own any of it. We're just fans of it. We're a club. And it's just like the oil club.
Within the office, employees were generally seen watching Laserdisc movies, playing Quake Deathmatch, and eating takeout. And this is hilarious. And yeah, it has to be 96, so Quake is out. It was described to have the same atmosphere as a dorm, essentially, punctuated by trash talking, the occasional breaking of equipment. One of their writers, Richard Galbert, recalled a night where the engineering team was just drunkenly wrestling each other on the floor and drawing profanities on the whiteboard.
It's basically...
We have fun.
Yeah. No, it's like... It's exactly what everybody imagines game development was like in the 90s. And what people probably think game development is like today, but it's not. No. It's like, I think it's like, I think you said it perfectly. It's that dorm culture where it's just a bunch of dudes in a room, like it's like you say, in combat boots and a bunch of outcasts and nerds just making a game.
And granted, this frat attitude did carry over from the early id days, with pizza and D&D being a vital step in the process that gave us Wolfenstein. Romero has been on record many times explaining that video game development should be fun and that it shows in the final result. And I can dig it, minus any toxicity. As far as I know, there wasn't, but problem was they had that part down, but what about the output? Their first task, Dominion Storm Over Gift 3.
Okay.
Heard of it?
Nope.
I didn't think so, because...
Storm Over what?
Storm Over Gift 3? Is that right?
Gift?
Doesn't make any sense.
Check for a typo.
Man.
Storm Over Gift. What the fuck?
And is it really the third? Did I just have like an aneurysm writing this? Let me see this.
Or like Storm Over Grift, am I right?
Storm. Nope, it's Storm Over Gift.
What the fuck?
Storm Over Gift 3.
Is Gift like a place? Like there's a storm over it?
I don't know.
We need answers, Randy.
Essentially, it was a military-themed RTS for Windows, originally a spin-off of the mech game Genome. As planned, Dominion was far into its production process when Ironstorm waltzed in and acquired both the IP and the team's 7th level, co-founder Todd Porter's previous employer, who was encroaching on bankruptcy. With a significant portion of it already done, it was expected to only take $50,000 and 3 months to get out the door. But this is...
$50,000, that's ambitious.
Yeah, I mean, this was a goal they failed to hit. When it eventually saw release in June of 1998, it costed hundreds of thousands more with an added year of work. This to then just be given mixed to poor reception and low profit numbers.
I would just like to point out, okay, $50,000 is like, that's barely the cost of one developer, at least one working for them. I don't know how much developers were paid in the 90s, but it's like, that's one person's salary.
They were being pretty assuming, but I think they're like, the logic was like, well, we're just going to polish this up. And then even that.
But $50,000.
Yeah, no.
That's one person's salary. Like, that's it. It's just like, you're just saying it's like, we're going to pay one guy to finish this up. That's it.
Yeah, even to get it sent for cert or print, like
I was going to say, what are you going to, the $50,000 is probably not enough to get it printed.
Yeah, and they're a publisher. Yeah. So it's like,
Somebody never read The Mythical Man Month. Did you have to read that book?
Why don't you enlighten me now? What the fuck?
So there's a book I had to read in programming school. There's a famous IBM project that was behind schedule, and IBM just kept hiring developers and spending more money. Yeah. But that they make you read this book about it where you think for every person that you hire or put on a project, you're going to shorten the time, but you're actually lengthening the time because you
Right.
have to train them.
Oh yeah.
And they have to understand a
Okay.
code base.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So
So what is like a man month, like a man hour or whatever?
yeah.
And
It's like you're trying every person you hire you think will take months off of the project's delivery date, but it
Yeah.
actually adds months on.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's management for you.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's just from a general productivity perspective, measuring something in months rather than hours. Is that the whole idea, that you shouldn't measure a project in hours, you should measure it in months?
No, I think that was just a reference to the they say we're X months behind, so we don't say we're X years behind on a project.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Just a quick update, Austin. You said, did you find the?
Yeah.
I think you were right, Matt. Gift is a yeah.
It says Wikipedia says the game takes place over the fictitious planet of Gift 3.
You could
So that's why it's not even the third game in the
yeah, there's
series.
no
It's
one or
just-
two, because that's what I was also trying to.
okay.
It's just called
Yeah.
Storm over Gift 3.
This will be
'cause
behind the
Gift 3
scenes. We paused for a second, and
Yeah.
actually, I need to read more. And also, I guess they were up for sale because Genome didn't do well either.
I would just
Yeah.
like to point out if
They bought Dominion for 1.8 million, by the way, and like when they acquired their company.
okay, I just like to point out, if it was a fictitious planet, they could have named it anything cooler sounding than Gift.
Yeah,
Just saying. I was like, if it's like,
it's also already a word. Like that's why you have to read it. If you say if you have to go over your title like multiple times to try
Yeah.
and gather like
I'm just saying, it's like if it was like if Gift
the
was like,
order of those words.
it's like it was like an important town in Sardinia that was like rated, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, it's the name of the town, you can't change it, but it's like you name the planet Gift. You could have named
Gift
it
3.
Gift 3. You couldn't name it like,
Make up a word.
yeah. What's the word?
Anything would have been better.
It's like StarCraft has like a million planet. Metroid Prime has a million planet
Yeah.
names. It's like you could name
Star
it
Wars.
Any,
They
Star
couldn't even
yeah.
name one.
Yeah, they couldn't name one. They blew it on the first one.
Well, who cares about Dominion though? Because over the horizon there was something greater, a video game that would change everything as we know it. Not to bury the subject at hand, I purposely left out a key part of their publicity push during the launch of their venture, talking about Big Sword, or translated from Japanese to English, Diakatana. Rumored to have a budget of around 30 million, which was nothing to sneeze at during the 90s.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, this project was really fucking going for it. They were going to be unique weapons and enemies in a plot that was to span centuries throughout history, past and future, from ancient Greece to the Dark Ages in Norway to a cyberpunk Japan.
So real quick,
yeah.
Okay, so Romero was the one that had the interest in occultism as well. Okay, and so now he's also kind of a weeb as well because he wants to make Diakatana.
Oh, yeah.
Dude,
I find that not shocking
This
at
is
all.
90s nerd culture, like all in one person right here.
Yep.
It's like I see, it's like, man, he really was. And listen, not that I'm not gonna,
Oh, yeah.
it's like, not
I'm not
take
going to
it-
rag on that.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna take a dig at it, but it's like, it's man, he was certainly of an era, and like really just
Yeah.
like you can see so much 90s nerd culture in just one guy.
The Jonan Vasquez type.
Yeah.
Even
Yes,
more
yes.
notable than this, however, was going to be their inclusion of sidekick NPCs that would fight alongside you in each of its 24 levels. Levels where you would assume the role of Hiro Miyamoto, named from, I said it in the intro, but this was damn ambitious. Like, there was no blueprint for that degree of AI yet. This later proved incredibly difficult to manage. Compare this to other FPSs at the time. GoldenEye 007 had sequences with ally characters, except not for the entire campaign. And not just this, but it was to feature full cutscenes, voice acting, a completely original sprawling soundtrack from composer Will Locoto. They were pitching quite the promise here, almost reaching as far as penning a companion comic book from a separate wing of the company prior to IDOS saying no. Ironically, Ion did license the Quake engine from id to begin. The Daikatana staff was only made up of 15 people, and after all, you couldn't start from, total scratch there. So their coders and artists got to it. Now it was the PR department's turn to shine. The pedigree was here, the consumer interest was there, everyone was dying to see what was next. It was the fucking Doom guys. How do you spread awareness for a thing this huge?
Yeah.
I think you all know what I'm hinting at.
So, again, as like kind of commentary, it's like whenever you assemble like dream teams,
Dream team.
they always wind up just kind of floundering, or just like they don't work well together.
That's why it's the same reason that super bands are never good from like or better than where they came from.
It's because it's never about the substance. It's always about the personality rather than the actual substance. There's like when you put them all on the same team, when they're on their own teams, they work great because they're trying to play, and it's like the team has a chemistry. But when you put a bunch of big personalities and just make it about the personality, they don't play well.
It's because when you're making art, it takes big personalities and small personalities, and you take all of the big personalities, put them together. It turns out that you're leaving out all the people that people don't know about.
Yeah, right.
So the PR team was up at the up to bat at the plate. Yeah. Remember what they brought?
Yep.
The most infamous advertisement in gaming, of course. The Blood Red magazine page that in bold black text read, quote, "John Romero's about to make you his bitch." With underneath of that, the lesser discussed "Suck It Down."
Suck it down.
The title of the game was suspiciously missing. No release date, just that and their studio logo. This was printed across a slew of publications that June in '97 when barely anything else in the project was done or started.
I was about to ask this, like, wait, did we skip the part where we talked about the developer, or did I was like not paying attention? But it's like we haven't.
They're in the early stages of development.
So this is okay. So
they're getting out ahead and being like, "This is what we're cooking."
This is This is a teaser announcement.
Yes, teaser is probably a more appropriate term. And I mean, it was provocative. The word was out, I guess. Not that the public reacted to it well. Like it's silly and crass, but it made waves. Issue was that those that saw it mostly interpreted it as a kind of confusing or condescending message. Even back then, you were probably like, well, these folks sure, do feel highly of themselves. Which did create massive expectations, to say the least.
So out of curiosity, too, was this advertisement, was this in just like gaming and trade magazines, or was this like, I didn't know if it was like, if you went into the subway in 1997, did you see this poster?
I think, no, but I think the magazines were like, they probably made it into more mainstream ones as well. But
there weren't a whole. I guess
there'd probably be policies about having the word "bitch" and "suck it down" and like a bit public. At a public place.
And you mean it's not showing up in People magazine? Yeah,
that would be good though. Your parents be like, "What?
What? Sweetie, who is this Romero person?" Yeah.
The story of this is rather amusing though. Apparently, the spread was drawn up by an agency belonging to the Richards Group. The previously mentioned Mike Wilson basically thought it was funny as it epitomized the in-your-face nature of their brand. And when it was initially presented to Romero, he was for it until an hour later when he circled back with, quote, "I don't know, man." Wilson's response, "John, quote, don't be a pussy." he then quietly signed off on it.
Oh, my God. Wow. That is such an interesting anecdote.
So with the relationship between them and the press already soured, Ion Storm had to prove that this wasn't just empty narcissism. Oh, and Romero did repeatedly express regret for the ad on multiple occasions.
That's crazy that the phrase "don't be a pussy" and ended one of the most prolific careers in video games.
Yeah.
So wait, and just repeat, who said it and who was it to sign that?
Wilson said it to Romero to sign off.
No shit.
Yeah.
And Wilson was the head of the PR department. So.
Oh, man. That's... I wonder how Romero feels about this guy now that he just basically just said it.
I mean, he said he's regretted it for the rest of time.
Yeah.
Man. I want to. If you don't have any, I want to know more about that guy. I kind of want to dig into.
I think he'll come up here and there.
Okay.
But moving on to that December, something else happened, and the release of Quake 2. It was performing gangbusters, and the noticeable leap in tech caught the eyes of the Office programmers who saw the potential in upgrading to those tools instead. Therefore, they transferred their code over to the new engine, causing their first of many delays. And that was set to be 6 months of work, was being pushed to... Basically, they made their launch window now for an unspecified date in 1997. Or 1998. Sorry, we're in 97. But since they're saying Diakatana we're getting next year. It was still a smart move regardless. Quake 2's engine was dope. Just look at COD.
Yep.
And the staff would have chosen to use it from the get-go if possible. But yeah, they took the hit. Romero was fine. He had his yellow Hummer and wads of bucks in his wallet. So no
there
worries.
you go.
With id's continued success, the rivalry between them and Ion was palpable. Wilson went on to promote the company and lineage, building excitement and guaranteeing that a badass shooter would be arriving for hardcore gamers to experience.
Man. Oh God,
they weren't afraid of their former rulers, although this hype came suspicion as well.
Yeah, I just like this Wilson guy. I'm just like, I want to know more about it because I'm like, dude, you are making the wrong moves
he's
now.
Pumping everyone up.
Yeah, I was like, dude, you were setting this up for a disaster. I kind of blame this guy for a large
part little bit because he's not a dev. You know, it's
so that's what I'm saying. It's just like, listen, it sounds like he got infected by the frat boy culture and was basically just like, it sounded like he got high on you know.
I mean, he was the hype man. He was company hype man.
Yeah, and it's just like, dude, because you can see the disaster looming. Yeah, go ahead.
The many attempts to control the narrative was a reflection of what was brewing internally, especially when it came to management and the allocating of resources. The company hierarchy was never clear. Romero was obviously the figurehead, but he didn't want to be in charge of the financials. Plus, publishing was a whole other beast. And Diakatana wasn't the only listing on their docket either. Tom Hall was mid-production on the RPG Anachronics, which too switched to id Tech 2, while the Austin division was deep into the early stages of development on the critically lauded Deus Ex and Thief: The Deadly Shadows.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's like, okay, now we're reaching the late 90s stage, and it's like, I'm thinking, you talked about the Doom clones, and so it's just like, okay, well then that formula was dead, but towards the late 90s, like the first person genre was really branching out. And the very first one I thought of was Thief and the immersive. And Thief was, to this day, I got to be honest with you, there's really no other games like Thief 1 and 2. It's
pretty bold,
no one's really copied it. And it's like, I love those games. I know it's like
I mean, it's the same, like, like Deus Ex, you still see those.
Well, yeah, that's still to come.
Yeah.
That's what, Warren Spector, I think?
Yep.
And that's also Ion Storm, right?
Yes. Warren Spector and Harvey Wilson.
Yes. I just played System Shock 1, the remake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you can tell it's still, Doom still has a lot of its fingerprints in it with the maze.
You can see the foundation.
And there's a lot of keys in it, but it's like they tried to do something different where it was like you could go between levels. And it's like, so people are taking this Doom formula and they're like, we got to make this bigger. We can't just, it's like, that's it. It's like you see the industry evolving and moving away from just the Doom clone.
And they're trying new things. And this is like, this competitiveness not just amounted in like tension between the groups, it made communication also tough. Yeah. Todd Porter and Jerry O'Flaherty were more business savvy, though they had their own teams to oversee. Wilson did have the CEO position. Wilson was CEO. Okay, went from PR. He did both. Okay, so he was in charge of PR and he was CEO. What? Oh,
yeah,
God, but he had no real creative or executive power. This then highlighted a battle of supremacy within the walls.
Wait. How he's the chief executive officer, but he has no executive power?
Yeah,
that doesn't make it. I think, is it just because I remember reading this, like that was what his position technically said, but Romero was really the one who made all the decisions.
He was a CEO in name only,
kind of, yeah.
Which I guess makes sense why he was just constantly PRing and hyping up. If he has no executive powers, all he can do is just talk about his company and the games. Yeah,
exactly.
That makes sense.
Basically, he is the boss, but John Romero is actually the boss. And when you're a CEO, but you're not actually the boss,
it's
you
just
can't
on
do
paper.
anything.
What do you do when you're not? Yeah. You're the executive officer. If you can't execute anything, you don't. There's no point to you.
That's why you were just walking around being like, yo!
That's it.
So post the completion of Dominion, Todd seemingly was demanding more respect, according to Wilson. The older Porter suggested the co-founders should, quote, all wear blazers to work so that new people would understand who were the bosses. This type of behavior was then exemplified with him requesting coffee from lower-tiered employees, an ask that Wilson claimed was demeaning and cruel, causing him to approach Todd and state, you can't talk to people like they're construction workers, you're not a foreman, and these people are artists and programmers. So there you have it. I guess that's kind of a G move right there. But because this is your textbook superiority complex, and Wilson also felt like it was a distraction or passive-aggressive punishment from Dominion's misses. And the lack of organization on Diakatana's direction was prevalent. Meetings were unfocused. You had your typical feature creep, schemes to expand to outside media. That was when the comic book stuff came up. And decisions on where to shift funds without thoughtful compromise. Everybody was butting heads over the dollars and simultaneously spending it like there was no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And in case you thought Wilson was the voice of reason in this scenario, he got involved in his own scandal when he was caught embezzling company money to pay for a car after wrecking his.
Oh, no.
What's interesting is that Porter actually spoke better of Wilson than Wilson did of him. He said they disagreed here and there for sure, but denied the coffee or blazer thing ever happened. The crunch led to a stressful environment, though from his perspective, it wasn't as vitriolic as that would imply. How
pissed off can you be when you can just crash your sports car and then just buy a new one? It's like that certainly probably helped ease tension. Just getting money thrown at your face. Yeah.
This all then culminated in an incident where Wilson pleaded with Romero to fire him. Just before their COO Bob Wright caught wind of this, however, Romero decided to give him another shot instead. That wasn't until Wilson himself was let go soon after, citing the friction with Porter and representatives from IDOS as the primary culprits. Huh. Not that Porter or even O'Flaherty would stay throughout the production of Diakatana anyway. But so real quick, Austin, you mentioned that where this guy went at, because I think he's out of our story.
So, after he left Ion Storm, he went to Gathering of Developers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. After
he left Gathering of Developers, he founded a company called Substance TV, which only lasted a little under a year.
Okay.
And then he became executive vice president of Take-Two.
Keeping it real.
Of Take-Two.
Take-Two.
Okay.
Jeez.
Then him and a couple of his partners at Take-Two left to form Gamecock Media Group.
That sounds familiar.
That does sound familiar.
That's irrelevant because that was in 2007. They were acquired in 2008, and he left in 2008 to co-form Devolver Digital.
No.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Okay, so he had to have come up on the Guy Game episode then.
Yeah.
That's wild. Because I knew people from Gathering were the founders of Devolver. Man.
Yep.
Wow. That is genuinely stunning.
Yeah, they're probably like the best publisher like right now.
I was going to say, when he founded it.
Yeah, as far as indie games go. Like
now, out of curiosity, is he still with them?
Yeah.
I was on that too. I was going to say private, but they're publicly traded now.
According to Wikipedia, it says Wilson has served as a partner and frontman for Devolver Digital since co-founding the company in 2009.
Good for him. I mean, he grew up. I don't know. Like, that's success.
So he is one of the 5 founders of Devolver Digital.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is not how I expected that then.
Yeah. That's why I brought it up, because I was like, I was shocked. You were like, where did he go? And I was like, he must have like exited games and went into like PR and something else. And I was like, oh no, he's working at one of the best publishers in gaming right now.
Somebody got out of this unscathed, I guess, this story. But enough with the politics. Let's discuss the subject at hand. We got a time-hopping FPS with story at the forefront that needed so much work. Remember, this campaign wasn't going to be short, plus there was still the multiplayer to handle. A portion of the assigned members were composed of modders from various custom content communities. There was also now advanced lighting specs to take advantage of that had to be figured out, the friendly artificial intelligence to tackle. They were behind schedule, but keeping the game up to snuff visually was, at once, a priority. And without Carmack present to teach everyone the ins and outs of the fresher engine, the crew was left to piece it together by themselves. This hampered the process by months, and in March of 99, the game's code was now entirely implemented into id Tech 2. Now we're in 99, another year. They weren't alone in those struggles. The first Unreal took an extra 2 years to finish. 3D Realms Prey and Duke Nukem Forever, that you both covered, Austin, which is our fourth hot button plug of the day, they saw several pushes as well. Meanwhile, the standards for shooters kept raising like the bar higher and higher now that the cinematic juggernaut Half-Life was on the block, stealing their thunder.
I wanted to point out the Call of Duty engine is based on the Quake 3 engine.
Oh, really?
I
thought it was
engine.
2. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's actually the other one. I'm like, I know I'm missing a few FPSs from that era. Obviously GoldenEye 2, but then Half-Life in 98. It's like, shit, like Doom is not good enough anymore. It's like
We're on the precipice.
These are massive technological shifts in direction, especially like Thief, Half-Life, GoldenEye. Like all 3 of them came around.
You got to worry more about like animation and lighting.
That means we got to do a Thief episode.
I guess so.
I would love to do a Thief episode
because we've done Duke Nukem, we've done Prey, we've done
we
Halo.
Halo.
We did GoldenEye. We did Half-Life.
I would be honored to do
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I replayed that. I replayed that 2 years ago. It's Looking Glass, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
yes. And I was going to say, I'm sure Randy will get to it, but also a Deus Ex episode, but this might be a Deus Ex episode.
And yes, it kind of is.
Yeah.
So low morale around the penthouse began to sink in, as well as Romero's commitment to being a leader. And he'd frequently disappear on press trips or resign himself to playing online games in his office cubicle. Will Lecanto, their head audio/music engineer, had much sympathy for him, stating that it was evident that this wasn't what he signed up for. Quote, "You can't translate that camaraderie that was at id when they had a small team into a 20 to 30 person company."
Yeah.
Romero later exclaimed that the constant traveling wasn't true and that his deathmatching nights were research. I say that all the time, right, guys?
Yeah.
Quote, "Playing was necessary to know where we were in terms of hitting the mark. If you don't want to play your games, who else will?"
Yeah.
And I get that, yeah.
Strong agree.
These and those situations Will was referring to, those quote, only happened after 6 p.m. some days. He could totally telling the truth, but it does sound defensive, comes across a little defensive, but I don't know.
I mean, we talked about in the GoldenEye episode, like, multiplayer wasn't even supposed to be in
No,
that game.
and they were just playing Bomberman and Mario Kart, and they're like...
And then when they threw GoldenEye, when they threw multiplayer into the game, it was only because they played it every night as a team that it got into the final release.
Which, unfortunately, is one thing you probably miss about with the working from home rather than...
Also, I talked about the infamous Halo pistol... was because they used to play Halo multiplayer in the office, and the one dude who was like in charge of everything was sick and tired of the pistol being weak, and he tweaked the numbers the day before cert.
That's fucking great.
And made it one of the most powerful weapons in first-person shooter history.
Oh my God. So I got to say, if you are a game company, okay, and you see your coders playing the game that they are coding and they're doing it recreationally, like they're having fun, encourage that. Because listen, if the game isn't fun, I promise you they won't be playing it. It means you won't play it unless it's not fun and it's like it's good. That means like, hey, people are having a good time with this game. And I agree, it's like, how do you know what's good unless you literally just get into it? Like, how do you balance it? How do you know what's like, what works? So it's like, I agree that it's like, play your game.
Yeah. So the combination of more delays and disorganization caused increased hostility, which led to serious reporting on the endeavor. Employees started to transfer to the Austin branch or simply leave Ion altogether. That October, their lead artist in Diakatana, Brian Pritchard, left and was replaced. The turnovers didn't cease there either. In November, 8 staff members promptly exited to join the Gathering developers, Mike Wilson's initiative, specifically on a $2 million contract for Kiss Psycho Circus.
Hell yeah.
Gathering of developers.
Yeah.
What did they make?
A lot.
A lot.
Okay.
So because they were basically a body of multiple different companies. You had Terminal Reality, Terminal Velocity, Raven... Like
3D Realms.
That's why. Okay, I know these companies. It
was like
Remember Blood Rain?
Like a weird developer co-op.
Yeah,
where they realized they're like, we're all working for these larger companies to make games, and like, what's the point in competing when we all have tools and stuff that can help each other?
Gotcha, it was a good idea.
Yeah.
And then until the guy game ruined everything. No, But this thing had the vibe of a hot potato or a rotating door at this point. By its completion, I believe there were 5 credited leads on programming.
Ooh.
It was a mess and was seen as a major betrayal to poor Romero. These departures hurt him. However, he was lucky enough to bring professional Quake player Stevie Case into the family as a lead. Or as a level designer, and artist Chris Perna to help polish character models.
Yes, founder of Annapurna.
Going into January of 99, Romero took an interview where he explained that despite the slow progress, they were on track to make an official appearance at E3 that summer. Except this confidence was hastily shattered the same month when the Dallas Observer printed a story on the internal struggles they were facing. The citations themselves coming from undercover workers and leaked emails as the main evidence. Ugh. So the article spread across the industry. Suddenly, everybody knew of the quittings, the firings, the ridiculous spending and financial status of Ion, the overall problems with management. Despite John's attempt to extinguish the fires, after seeing this, Eidos was not convinced that operations were running so smoothly and sent their publishing director, John Kavanagh, to sort any issues. We might never know what his takeaway was or how that conversation went, though it was apparent that an increase in funding was required. That April, Eidos then bought a 51 majority stake in Ion. This in exchange for advances to the remaining devs.
So I just imagine John Kavanagh just walking into the publishing department there. It's like that gif of what is it, Community? He walks in with the pizza and like things are on fire and it's chaos. And it's just like he just shows up and he's like, it's
foosball tables here now.
Yeah.
So E3 1999. This was the moment to truly sway the public image surrounding Diakatana. Guess what they didn't do, or better yet, guess the frame rate at which it ran at.
Oh no,
12.
12. Yeah, I'm gonna go. 8.
6.
Turns out it was 5 per second.
Oh,
That's 5 singular.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
dude, that's like GoldenEye was just barely making it.
Yeah.
With 12. Yeah, it's
so according to staff member Jake Hodges, Romero requested last minute changes to the demo before flying out, and that in turn crippled the build that they had for the show. John deflected these claims, stating it was the design team that wanted to implement them. In the book, the blame was put on Todd Porter. I don't know. It probably won't ever be certain whose fault it was really. The point is the presentation went poorly. Those early impressions were met with mass mockery. It was dire, PR disaster.
Ooh.
And that convention meant everything back then, and this was the first look at the company's most signature project.
I was gonna say, had Ion released anything yet?
Dominion. Storm over
Gift 3.
And that was years prior to this. And they didn't start development on that.
Of course.
That wasn't
an
their
instant
game.
classic. Changed gaming forever.
They co-developed it.
Yeah.
But, or not even really. They just like punched it up at the end. But, and so with morale even lower, both Porter and Flaherty resigned from Ion Storm weeks later that July. This didn't shake Romero though. Quote, after Todd and Jerry left, the entire atmosphere changed. Everyone was in high spirits and working hard.
Yeah.
So, you know what's the funny thing is
he was in high spirits.
Yeah.
Just from all the Lambos and cocaine. The funny thing is we've been talking a lot about this history. It's like there seems to be so much effort being put into controlling the image, which is funny because that's how the company got started. Is that it was all image, and it's just like, did anybody stop to think
everything?
Yeah, and it's like, did nobody stop to think like, hey, how do we solve this? We got to make the game better. Like we need like more money and more PR is not going to solve this.
It's more of how are we going to get the people on our side.
Yeah, and it's just like listen,
with
at
a good game, I don't know. Yeah.
With a good game, and it's like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good your hype is. If your game sucks at the end of the day, no one's going to want to play it.
It's actually detrimental if your game has a lot of hype and ends up sucking.
Yeah, turns out
because a bad game from an okay developer makes much less of a dent than a bad game from a noted developer.
Not just noted developer,
you, Suicide
noted people.
Squad.
Yeah, not just that, the Dallas Mafia of all people.
Yeah.
The Dallas Mafia.
Yeah, like these guys, they were made out to be gods. Yeah.
Now, there isn't a whole lot to say regarding the closing stages of Daikatana's production. It seemed like there was some crunch, which isn't surprising. More delays were inbound. Again, to be expected, considering what we have learned. To summarize, 7 months became 4 years for those keeping track. On August 21st, 2000, our game finally went gold. There was a tie-in comic. That apparently came back. An official Prima strategy guide, except there are 2 pieces of the puzzle that we have yet to discuss. The boxes and discs being pressed are for the PC version. Following the commercial success of id's impressive conversions and reimaginings to home consoles and handhelds with Doom and Quake, a special N64 cart was announced, as well as an offshoot Game Boy Color title that was sourced out to a separate studio, Kemco, a Japanese developer who brought us the Top Gear series of racing games. No affliction to the UK television franchise.
Now I have to ask before we get into the reaction, and B, your experiences with it, that Game Boy version of it. Game Boy Color, you said?
So what's super interesting about this edition of Diakatana, though, is that it wasn't a shooter. And at the behest of Romero, it was intended to resemble something of akin to a top-down Legend of Zelda. It was like it was an RPG, like an action RPG, and it was directed by Taiko Magi, and hilariously was completed before the mainline entry was.
And how does it have like a Metascore?
We'll get there.
Okay,
but
cool.
it's like what's interesting is like Kemco denied any rumors that they would see released first, but they sent that out, like they outsourced it, and then they made a game, and now they're waiting on this one.
So now we now get to the point where we have yet another Nintendo 64 port. Nintendo 64 only port.
Yes.
Like, it's just like not PlayStation, not Dreamcast, which
They're-
were arguably had more, they had the disk space that they would probably they had more storage.
Because these guys were also set to publish the N64 version, at least in the US anyway. And we'll return to each of those in a moment, but like I can't confirm this as fact, Matt, but supposedly there was a PlayStation port said to have been in the works at one time, and that was subsequently canceled. Could be legit, could be hearsay. But yeah, it is.
So
yeah,
just as a quick question, to you two, okay. This reminds me of StarCraft 64, which is just like, okay, so now if you're going to
they made that work, and they developed that internally too, which is so crazy.
But it's one of those things where it's like,
to think about.
If you're going to port to a console of the time, normally I would think either PlayStation or Dreamcast now this late.
Yeah.
But both of these only came out in the Nintendo 64. And I am so curious what the decision...
think the Nintendo 64 was more known for having success in the shooter space than the PlayStation was.
That actually...
And I think maybe the Dreamcast was too new. But it is weird. Like, like, considering... I mean, Nintendo was, like, family-friendly image was less, like, ingrained at this point, especially with the Rare stuff. But I think it's like... GoldenEye's blowing up. Like, Perfect Dark's coming out. Doom 64 did well. The Quake 1 and 2 did well on the N64. Like, Hexen came out on the N64. So they were probably just like, well, that's where to go. I mean, the PlayStation had, as far as FPSs goes, I mean, they had Doom and stuff as well. But I'm trying to think of, like, I mean, they had that Alien game that created dual analog, kinda. I don't know. What other shooter? I mean, there was Loaded, and
you know what I just realized? Their familiarity with the N64 from
Rainbow Six was on both.
Yeah, and Hexen and Heretic and Doom. I know, Hexen and Doom came out, so it's like they have familiarity with the Nintendo 64 development kit and source code. But you're right, there were a lot of shooters on the Nintendo 64. More
Duke Nukem was on.
More notable ones than probably
was Quake on the PlayStation.
It probably was.
Because I was going to say, it might also just be like they know the engine can work on the N64 because Doom and Quake were on the N64.
That is actually a good point.
Yeah,
no, that's it. So there's less porting that needs to be done. And I was going to say, I can't think of any noteworthy multiplayer first-person shooters. Like Medal of Honor was on the PlayStation.
Oh, that was the big one. I couldn't, as far as like exclusive one.
Oh, also, I was going to say, it's like they probably wanted to take advantage of the 4-player, which
that was the other big thing,
which arguably made FPS.
I don't know how I didn't bring up the Turok game, like that trilogy on the N64. They even had a Turok Rage Wars, which was just the multiplayer. That's how much like the 4-player split screen thing like mattered.
You're right. That's okay. Never mind. You guys answered my question.
With especially with obviously the Rare stuff and World is Not Enough.
I just think it's so funny whenever I see it's like third party only on N64. It's just like really,
and it's odd, especially because the PlayStation sold considerably better.
That's what I'm saying. It's like because there were more sales on PlayStation.
I think it probably was a multiplayer.
Also, they're so different that it's not like now where you just put it on both.
It's like you ever try like
it was a huge commitment.
A lot of times, if games came out on both, like some of the James Bond stuff, it would be different developers, like a whole different game from scratch. Or in like what? Sorry, I'm not gonna get into it because I'll be here all day talking. Because those platforms were so different in what they could do that that was a fascinating time to play games. There's like, oh, the N64 version is great and the PlayStation version sucks. And then it'll be a different game. You'll be like, well, the PlayStation version is great and the N64 version sucks. And you're just like...
PlayStation Rainbow Six sucked.
Oh, it's awful.
It's awful.
That is so bad.
And that was a co-op game me and Chris beat on the N64.
And the N64 version is great. You can do all the planning still from the PC edition there. But back on the PC, Diakatana proper saw it stumbling onto retail shelves on May 22nd. By the end, there were only 2 credited people who were said to have been on board for the entire ordeal. They also were projecting a sales forecast of 2.5 million units for the quarter in order to turn a profit. What was the reality? 8,190 copies by July, resulting in a revenue of $271,982. Not exactly 2.5. No.
Just barely covering the CEO's salary, I'm sure.
And this was strictly for the computer. The N64 counterpart is trickier to calculate, as the bizarre choice was made to have that version as a Blockbuster exclusive in North America, meaning it couldn't technically be sold on its own, not for several months. It could have been that they got a good deal. It could have been cold feet from the publisher, or the rise of rentals is the reason.
So tell me,
it's a tactic we've seldom seen with stuff like Clay Funner, Sculptor's Cut, and NFL Blitz Special Edition.
Yeah.
But this felt different to me. And also that dope Indiana Jones game.
Yeah.
Infernal Machine. Yeah.
But that's funny. So they must have. So if they had a deal with Blockbuster, they must have made some royalty on every.
That's a rental, right?
I assume either every rental or just a flat contract. Okay,
Yeah.
$271,000 is not a high contract amount. Tell me they made more from the Blockbuster deal than.
I can't. Those numbers aren't out there.
Wow.
All I have are sales
It
numbers.
must have been $270,000. Is nothing for a contract. That's like.
So maybe they might have made more on the N64 version than the PC version.
Yeah, it made more money of it. $270,000. That's not a whole lot of money.
No. By fall, you could purchase it without going through everyone's favorite dead video outlet, and you can pick up Diakatana on the Game Boy Color too, if you lived in Europe, that is. We'll get to reviews in a sec, though the IP's out-of-the-gate reception was believed to have damaged, it tarnished the name so much that the plug was pulled on the launch of that here in the United States, which is funny when you see the contrasted scores.
Yeah.
Japan also had to wait until later, but it's the Diakatana was, it was made from an American developer, but they outsourced it to Japan that made a European game that didn't come out. It's fucking...
Americans are like, yo, give us our IP back.
I think they thought if Diakatana, the Game Boy version comes out, everyone already is running away from it like it's scorched earth, and nobody would buy it. But they didn't have the internet in Europe, I guess, or gaming magazines. I don't know.
I'm very curious about that Game Boy.
Yeah,
version.
me too. I want to check it out. I saw some footage, but going into September, all three versions totaled 40,351 units bought. So slightly better. That was when the N64 port actually went on sale. You could buy it at GameStops and stuff.
Okay, gotcha.
Rental info is not out there.
It's kind of funny that it's
so it's slightly.
This is of an era where if a game was that shitty, it's just you didn't
magazine were doomed yet. You can't relaunch twice.
That's what I was gonna say. It's just these days, if a game is crap, it's first of all, a certain amount of people will play it just to see how crappy it is, and you can't just let it sit there and patch it and it gets better. There was no No Man's Sky back then.
Yeah,
a bad game stayed a bad game.
So it was an abject failure. A flop the likes of this industry had never seen yet. Really. But that's just numbers. What did the gamers think? What did we think?
What did we think?
What did we think? All right, should we go first?
No. I want to hear what the reviewer said.
No, I think I want us to go first this time, only because before we play the score game. So for the record, the three of us only played it on the N64 for perhaps an even shittier experience in some ways and a better one in other ways, but we might as well, go the full distance, right?
Yeah.
And this was also not on an emulator. We used the tried and true definitive controller for first-person shooters. And as we've stated on this very podcast in the past, I love to torture Matt with terrible games.
Oh yeah.
This was a Christmas present. You're welcome.
I reinstalled.
I
reinstalled The Quiet Man because I saw it in my Steam library, and I know it's only 3 hours.
I love The Quiet Man.
I know it's only 3 hours, and I still can't bring myself to want to do it.
Oh no, it's great.
So difficult to want to play.
You didn't play it that much. You watched. For the most part, you watched me and Dave play.
I played the earlier stuff. You guys had to do the bosses.
Yeah, exactly.
The most fascinating thing about Quiet Man, I just gotta say this real quick, was that when you unlock the sound mode, it actually makes it significantly easier to play because you don't realize how sound design, how important that is for when contact is made in a beat 'em up. You need the feedback in order to get it to flow.
Or also,
that whole thing was so ill-conceived.
Spatial awareness.
Yeah,
you can't see it when an enemy is coming from off screen.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
But the last thing I should add prior to the discussion, this port does not feature voice acting or AI companions. One of their big selling points. They also made the red blood purple here. I guess to avoid backlash from parents, but still got an M rating regardless. And Doom and Quake on the N64 weren't changed this way. No censorship there, there wasn't any controversy. So I don't know. I also read that one of the boss fights was cut for who knows why as well.
Memory reasons, probably.
Yeah, though yeah, I was mistaken on the VO. Maybe that would have made the cinematics far less dry and tedious to watch. Me and friend of the show, Andrew Banks, literally timed that fucking opening cutscene 11 minutes and 22 seconds of stills or crappy animation with text under it.
Yes.
No dialogue, no sound in general.
No sound, just
other than an annoying 4-bar music sample that endlessly repeats.
Yes, I was going to say
fucking nuts.
I was going to say it's kind of a for being a game released in 2000, like they had voice acting in in Perfect Dark.
They did.
It is not even really a cutscene. It is mostly just kind of just looks like two dolls like kind of wiggling back and forth to make it look like and then just text underneath that you have to read, and it's like, this is not impressive at all. It's like,
apparently the performances in the PC version are embarrassing anyways, but it's it's just the whole thing. But what did you guys take away from this masterpiece? I see, Matt, you brought some notes in.
I did.
So
I remember I wanted to write notes just to remember it. So hold on, let me do I got my notebook here. Let me get the paper clicking
sound in
there. So my notes here for the multiplayer.
You just drew a picture of a gun to your head.
Yeah. My notes are for the multiplayer, which I'm glad. Okay,
we did try the multiplayer.
So, but I mean, my thoughts on the single player is, I mean, I would say it's like for that era. Like I said, you got to compare it to what was already coming out around the time.
Not looking at it through the lens.
Okay. You had Perfect Dark in 2000. Mm-hmm. Okay, Half-Life was already out. Thief was already out. Yeah. System Shock 2 was 99?
98.
98?
98.
And it's like, these were all like, tour de forces of first-person shooters. And then you had Halo coming out the next year.
Yeah, literally.
And then you play this game, I would almost argue it is, it feels lesser than like a Quake game.
It does, absolutely.
Because it kind of has the graphical fidelity of Quake, but it doesn't
have the art direction.
But it doesn't
have... it's very ugly and brown.
It's very ugly and brown, and it's not fun. Quake is fun.
And I pointed this out, it's stiff as shit. Yes. Like the clunkiness, I'm old jank. I have pretty good patience for that stuff. But there's no bob, there's no head bob.
Yeah.
Which is that's insane. There's no aim assist.
Mm-hmm. The music, I think you said it'll drive you mad.
Yeah.
But I think most of all, again, it's plotting. The pacing is the pacing is very plotting, and
it might be the worst first level. It's just such a terrible way I've ever seen to start a campaign.
Yeah, it's kind of just
shoot turrets and tiny frogs.
Shoot turrets and tiny
frogs. You can barely
frogs.
locate on your screen.
Yeah, and then the second level, it's like
this is post the intro.
There's all those platforming sections where it's like we were watching Chris. It's like you have to ride up an elevator, but halfway down you have to jump off and hit a switch, and then wait for the elevator to come down. And when you jump off, you lose health if you miss it. And then you have to ride it all the way up, and if you miss it, you got to keep doing that. And it's like, these are the things that...
I appreciate his dedication to trying to finish a level, because he was just quiet. I've never seen him quiet.
There's another puzzle in that area where you have to hit a button at the bottom of an elevator and then get on an elevator, ride it up, and then run across a bridge before it retracts. Otherwise, you have to go down and do it all over again.
Yeah.
And it's just like... these are not fun things to do. And
right,
then he died.
The elevator is so slow.
Yeah.
It's the complete opposite of Doom 2016.
I don't see how he could do it any better, but he still had to hop off the elevator onto the platform, and then he still, when the bridge was retracting, had to jump over a little thing.
Yeah. And it's like, maybe he thought, well, this is a tough time window to make, but it's like, no, it's just frustrating, because if you have to redo it, that's punishing, and it just wastes time. And then he died to an enemy later on when he was at pretty good health, and then it sends you back to the beginning of the level, and you're like,
that's all. No. There's no autosaves.
There's no autosave. So it's just like, again, I say it's just like, if it had just come out, and it's like, it feels like it was a game that came out by just like a content milling company, or a game developer, not the best, not the Dallas Mafia.
For me, it almost looks like a game that was unearthed 5 years after it was meant to come out, right? Even if this somehow released in 1996, the same year as Quake is still a better game.
That is
and
it.
Quake 2 is great. So it's like this thing of being like, this seems like a progenitor to an old game. By the time you actually get your hands on it, it's like, you're like, when was this?
I think you said it perfectly. Yeah. If it came outside along Quake 2, you would still think Quake 2 is better than this anyway. Yeah, so it's like, the fact that it came out in 2000 is just like, it's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, but you're right. At that point, the Dreamcast is out. I think Quake 3 was 2000? 2001? Maybe 2001. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
It feels like something.
But it's like you have the GameCube and Xbox are right there. The PS2 is out in Japan.
No,
Right?
don't talk about the GameCube for first-person shooters.
No, that's not what I was talking
Stupid
about.
C-stick.
I loved first shooters.
The
Dude.
best
Metroid
console first-person shooter of all time was on the Xbox and nothing else.
So
I wasn't talking about the genre. I was talking about the tech. Like,
No, it had Time Splitters Future Perfect.
Exactly.
No, Time Splitters 2 is better. Fight me.
Future Perfect.
without a doubt,
Both great.
my impression of it is it felt,
Diced. Exclusive. Sorry, man.
I would describe it as a it feels as though it is a third-party launch title for the N64 that was very bad and promptly forgotten. It feels very prototyped almost.
Even the UI looks like placeholder kind of like, like it's.
Yeah. But that was, that was my impression of the campaign. And
I know. Well, we should have mentioned there is an RPG like, but you don't choose anything. You just have stats. That
No,
go
I think
up.
it's like Skyrim where you just jump enough and your
Right.
acrobatics goes up or whatever.
I do. At least the go kick butt and sayonara lines are funny.
Yeah.
That was the best part.
Yeah.
That was,
But no, like, it's so funny because like I didn't think it was that awful. Like Duke Nukem Forever is a much worse game.
Yeah.
It is.
If
But
you told
it's
me
a
I
more
had to-
offensively bad game in multiple ways. But
If you told me I had to beat one, I would pick Diakatana.
Yeah.
I probably would too. But also I Diakatana coming out in 2000 is still more forgivable than Duke Nukem Forever coming out in 2011 or 2012 or whatever it was.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And that's the funny thing is like I have since revisited, I mean, a couple of them are my favorite games of all time, but I have since revisited the original Half-Life. I have since revisited the original Deus Ex. I have since revisited Quake 2 and 1.
Yeah.
I have since revisited even Duke Nukem 3D.
Yeah.
Doom.
Yeah.
And
I want to get those turrets.
You play Diakatana and you're like, well, it seems frustrating, but like game design in the 90s wasn't a solved problem. Like some of those games were frustrating, but still fun.
Yeah.
And then you play Half-Life 1, and that's the worst of all the games that I've named. And you're like, oh.
Well, they remade it so many times. That's what you do.
Yeah. And you're like, oh no, Daikatana is dog shit compared to its contemporaries. Like not even like obviously
Half-Life
comparing it. I know, but like Half-Life 2.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
is leaps and bounds better.
Yeah. Of course.
It's like comparing it to like it's unfair sometimes to compare to say like, well, this open world isn't as good as Grand Theft Auto. It's like, yeah, no shit. Grand Theft Auto is the best one ever made.
Exactly.
Right? It's like, okay, Daikatana is not as good as Halo. Daikatana is not as good as Half-Life. Daikatana is not as good as Quake.
Yeah.
Sure. But it's just like you just keep going down the rabbit. It's weird. It's not as good as Duke Nukem. Oh, it's also not as good as Turok. Oh, it's also it's also not as good as the original Time Splitters, which is nowhere near as good as 2 or 3.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it just like it feels like a game that somebody gave up on is the best way that I can put it.
It kind of is.
It is, I know.
Yeah.
But
no,
like,
you're right. That resonates. Like you can feel it.
There are some
of,
like that we've covered a ton of stories.
In an
a lot
alternate
about
world,
shooters
maybe,
too.
yeah.
We've kind of covered a ton of stories on here where like Halo fucking limped across the finish line. Half-Life 1
so did
limped
GoldenEye.
across the finish line. GoldenEye limped across the finish line, and you're just like, but they're all so perfect.
I know.
Even now,
Yeah.
even revisiting them 20 plus years later, they're still like, you're just like,
Dude,
this is still better than some of the shooters that come out now.
Exactly, because they were made with love. Like
Yeah.
I know that sounds like corny,
That's
but
the
it's
thing.
true. They
It's like-
wanted to make those games,
But
they wanted them to be great.
to like, we've had the mic drop moment on this, like I talked about on this podcast multiple times of saying like, Halo barely made it out the door. Half-Life 1 barely made it out the door. And they're classics and they're amazing.
Yeah.
And then you play Daikatana and you're like, no, this feels like it barely made it out the door.
Yeah.
It's honestly, when you put it in that context, that just makes this whole thing so sad.
Uh-huh.
Like it's like, I mean, I think the worst thing a game can probably be is boring, right? And when we got so bored in our night with it but before that, we started to put in cheats just so we could witness like later chapters and see more of the weapons.
Yeah.
And they didn't vary it up enough. Like you'd think like you'd be like, oh wow, no, it's still kind of just bland. Like its pacing is a slog. The puzzles are obtuse. It's not even fun bad. It's just bad. And mind you, this fucking thing released just 2 months after Perfect Dark, and somehow looks and feels so dated. even in comparison to Turok, which came out in 1997.
Oh,
And I've played those like id ports on N64. They're not amazing, but they're entirely serviceable. Some ranging into pretty damn good. And like I think Doom 64 is like its own entire thing. You know, I don't know why I said I think. I know it is, but.
Also, I'm sad I did not check until now. Apparently, I own Diakatana on Steam. It's in my library.
Is it really? Well, we gotta go check that.
So I almost want to like.
I forgot that you. Yeah.
I almost want to like boot it up and just play it for a couple minutes, and then I'll just edit in like an opinion of it, right? Like, right? Ready?
I think that was our intention. Oh, is this where it's gonna be inserted?
Yeah, right.
All right, PC
Here.
review coming in 3, 2, 1.
Initially, when I made the joke that I was going to insert my opinion into the podcast about the PC version, it was going to be a joke. I was going to be like, it still sucks, and then cut back to what we were saying. And then I played it. And
I know it's just going to be you.
It was
now
just
I'm
going
also
to be me
here.
because you watched me play through it
I
on
did.
Discord. And like, it's confusing because it still sucks, but for all the different reasons.
The music is
better.
Significantly better.
Yeah.
That's
the sound effects are better. The animations are better.
Yeah.
The shooting feels better.
Which makes that N64 version all the more baffling that they didn't just scrap it. I
know.
I thought there would be some more shared unity between the two, and
it clearly wasn't done.
No.
Like, and you get like you play through the first level, and then you get to this point where there's like a door that you have to find, and you go into it.
It's all rearranged. Like the maps and everything.
And you're in like a police station, and former guest Chris was playing. We were watching him, and he got there in like 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I expected to be there within 20 minutes, and I played the PC version for an hour and a half, and I did not get anywhere close to a fucking police station or like a lab or whatever that was.
The console one has more mercy, because we looked on how long to beat.
It's 12 and a half or 6.5. Yeah, it's double the length.
Well, let me ask you, how did it feel? Because I could only gather so much over Discord, but how does it feel in relative to other PC shooters?
Bad.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's my fault, but I've never had this problem before. I don't play a ton of mouse and keyboard games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, not much either these days.
The only mouse and keyboard games that I play is maybe like Valorant. If I play Valorant or Counter-Strike or Overwatch or Siege, I will play them on mouse and keyboard.
The twitchy
shooters.
Yeah.
Anything else I'll play on a controller. Like even Halo Infinite I play on a controller. But like,
yeah,
it's not my mouse. I played Valorant like a week before this, and it was fine. But it was like this thing where like there was mouse acceleration on, no option to turn it off. And it was like if you flicked the mouse, if you move the mouse slowly, you move too slow. And then if you flick the mouse, the dude would do like a 270-degree turn, and you'd be looking at the wall to your left when you meant to look right. And
okay.
like...
And you tweaked all the options. There was nothing...
So that was when I first started playing on the Steam version. And then,
right.
As we mentioned in the podcast, there's a fan patch.
Yeah.
John Romero made the source code open for people, and they patched it with widescreen support and all this stuff. So I downloaded that, which gave you the option to disable mouse acceleration. So I disabled mouse acceleration. I disabled mouse smoothing. Nothing. So, like, I just couldn't shoot things. And there's gamepad support in the game, but the game came out far before the Xbox 360 controller drivers did, so the Xbox One controller did not work. And yeah, it felt like shit. The sound effects are of much higher quality, but they're annoying, so it makes them more annoying.
Yeah, it's also mixed so poorly.
Oh my god, the fucking flies, the buzzing is so much louder than everything else.
Yeah, than any of the ambient, like... that opening cutscene is just as long.
Just as long.
That.
It's different.
It is different.
It's better animated, and it's just as boring in different ways.
Yes, but also more racist.
Because they have voice acting, and that was not an Asian guy doing that Asian.
It did not sound like
actor.
No.
And then when the two guys driving the truck are speaking in Japanese accents, and I was like, first of all, not even close. It sounds like fucking Kung Fu Hustle without any of the satire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got rid of the sayonara menu.
They did.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it's so confusing.
The weapons are the same, but they don't look like they operate the same.
They do.
They do. Maybe it's just the visual, like the way.
Yeah, they look different.
Yeah.
But there was also like a thing where like the first level is all like we said on the podcast. We're recording this after.
Yeah, this is us from the future.
This is us from the future. But we said on the podcast, like the first level, it's like dragonflies and frogs and alligators. Yeah, cyber frogs. And it's like they're all, despite the fact that they're robots, they're all swimming in water, and you can't shoot underwater, but there's a lot of sections where you have to swim through things, but you also drown.
Yeah.
And it's like the place I stopped was
Terrible
like it was like a Half-Life puzzle, but just done way shittier, where like you're in a underwater tunnel that's full of water, and there's like a turbine spinning, and you have to drain the water so that you can breathe.
Yes.
And it opens up like a tunnel that you have to go through, but then when you put the water back, that's the only way to get over the turbine, but it also closes the door to the exit, and I was just like, I give up. This sucks.
You didn't even run into Superfly.
No, I didn't get to experience the AI stuff, unfortunately. I could not make it that far.
and apparently that's like...
Well, the fan patch has the ability to turn that off.
Yes, yeah. Did you get to jump in any of the online? I doubt there's any, like...
No.
Possible.
I did not look. But yeah. We will let you get back to the regular podcast. It's just, I had, like I said, originally I was just going to be like, yeah, it still sucks, but I had to talk about it.
No, it's good that this is in there because it's fucking interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I did not expect, like, it's, you know, obviously with Doom 64, they crafted their entire own Doom from the ground up. And Quake has, like...
Changes.
It changes. They tweak some things here and there, enemy placement, you know, but like this was like it was strange to see like that how the end, because they were both made internally, and it's like they have different designers and teams. Like I don't know. The N64
version feels like they were like, cut our losses and ship it, and they just went in with a hacksaw and like.
Yeah.
Cut off pieces and then stitched them together.
I think they rebuilt it from memory.
Yeah.
I think this is the part where it goes like this.
Like, it's like the one part where you go across a bridge and it collapses, and then you land in water, and then there's a tunnel to swim through to get to the next area. And I was like, I went across the bridge and it didn't collapse, and then a boss came out of the door, and I was like, there was no boss here on the N64 version. Yeah. It is wild.
Well, in summary, don't play either version.
Yeah.
So,
do not, under any circumstances, pay $7 for Diakatana on PC.
Okay. Right, yeah.
So in that version of the game, Austin, I wonder if you had to hit 2 buttons to crouch. Remember when we had to walking into a door? That's awesome. No, especially when the L isn't even being used.
Steam says I've played it for 3 minutes, so it's probably not good.
Well, you didn't make it through the opening.
I don't think I made it through the opening cutscene. No,
do you remember when we even popped the South Park game in after the...
Oh, you know what?
And that was an improvement. I mean, at least personality-wise.
Personality, I will actually say I would rather play Diakatana than the South Park first person.
We got into this argument when we played Diakatana. I think the South Park shooter's worse.
They're both terrible. But I think the South Park one, at least like the levels are open, and what you're doing is repetitive, but it's so simple. Because the South Park game is essentially a Serious Sam. Like, that's all you do is just shoot waves of enemies.
It's easier to forgive because it's got South Park's personality.
Yeah, there's attitude to it that's like, you know.
But yeah, I agree with everything you said with it. It's it is serviceable enough that if someone back then had bought it, you could probably get through to the end of it. It would not be, if you had to spend, like, if you spent full price on it, what, $50, $60, it's like, it's not worth the money. But it's like, if you played it now, you could get to the end of it. Yeah. And it's like, but it's mediocre compared to what else is out there.
I could see both angles of it. I could see somebody being like, playing it back then and being like, this isn't that bad. And I can see Quake and like id fans being like, this is garbage.
Yeah.
Because
think about where where you're coming from.
It is nowhere close to like Quake 2.
The only other sin I really wanted to mention, aside from the total lack of aim assist, which is insane to do in a console, but it's like, is the fucking audio. All of the samples sound like compressed ass. I think
Well, that's
it's like
that's
the
why,
guns, everything. Like, and you go back and N64 games have some of the coolest compositions of scores and fun of like effects.
That's why I think it was a quick and dirty solution to the N64 not being able to hold the original music.
Right.
That's why I want to check out the
Is
PC
that why
version.
the music's so irritating? When it loops incessantly by being mixed way too loud.
It's got like 3 songs. It's got that piano sound.
I'll edit in my opinion on the PC version's music right here.
Okay. Also, the multiplayer was atrocious and worse than the frame rate, more than it already was. We can't forget that. But at least that version had split screen. But there was no bots or even co-op, which the Quakes on N64 both had. So it's like, that's a drag.
Is there co-op in the game at all? Like in the PC version?
No.
Okay.
Although the PC version does have online, it did have on. Like it's. I mean, we're obviously not going to subject any of us to its entirety. That'd just be sadistic. But maybe one day when we're eventually insane enough. But it's
You mean when we're
it is $6.99 on Steam. If you guys want to fire up some multiplayer one night.
So that's the biggest thing on PC is obviously the AI partners to deal with. But
I for sure got this out of a bundle somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't know where.
It's probably an id bundle. I don't know. But and the servers are not up without modding. But which people have. But so on to the press's opinions.
So wait, before that, we did not touch on multiplayer, which I have to talk about because I wrote these notes back.
Sure.
So because we did play through multiplayer, and it's like
did you say there's 3 maps?
Yes, there are 2 maps.
2 maps.
So were you there when we played?
Yeah.
So you said it's like it feels like a game that someone gave up on, and it's like it's funny because GoldenEye was a mode that was tacked on at the very end, and it was fantastic. This feels like someone put in the bare minimum. Like you would think that it would be a selling point for these games because that's like Quake had multiplayer, and that was a selling point of Quake.
Yeah, that's why they spun off that Turok game.
And it's also why I imagine they probably want to put on the Nintendo 64 for the 4-player multiplayer.
And think about the amount of content in Perfect Dark's multiplayer that's already out at this point. All those bots and maps and everything.
It feels like almost rather than it was like an aim to make good multiplayer, it feels like it was almost tacked on just so they could put a bullet point on the box 4-player. Really, because it's ready. I have it here. It's got the multiplayer has 4 characters, 2 modes, and 2 maps, and that's it.
That is the bare minimum.
That is like the bare minimum you can put in multiplayer. Okay, the maps were very empty. And
they're so large. Like you're running around just
trying to find person, which is very tough to do in that game when it's just like you're kind of squinting for some pixels on the screen. The second mode was jewel mode. You remember that? Which is bad because every time you kill someone, it drops a jewel and you have to collect 5.
It
was the dog tags one, but it just goes over on and on and on because no one ever actually gains the lead. Okay. You cannot tell the weapons apart in that mode. So you just pick up a weapon and you're just like, what am I holding?
Is it cut off on the screen or is it just the cursor changes or something?
I think it's just, there's just not enough resolution to even see what.
I mean, even in single player, they all look like blobs that you're holding.
And then finally, I put down here, the punching is better than the grenade launcher because the punching did more damage than the grenades.
I remember us testing that,
It feels,
that's so dumb.
It feels honestly, it feels so empty. 2 maps. How hard is it to develop just a well, I mean, I'm sure hard, but it's like more than 2 of them, especially one that feel good to play and aren't empty. It's just like,
I totally forgot about that jewel mode. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah. But it seems like we weren't alone in our assessment. And with that in mind, it's time for a classic round of Who Can Guess the Metacritic. Or actually, damn it, wait, hold on. It is, Who Can Guess we're using game rankings today. They tend to go a bit further back when it comes to the older stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. From 1 to 100, you got Big Rig, Stock, Ocarina of Time. What are your guesses?
From 1 to 100. Okay,
you go first, Matt.
Yeah, so I'm thinking
we'll do both versions if you want too.
Are we doing PC N64?
Yeah. All right. We'll start with the PC version.
Okay, so for the PC version, I without having ever looked at the PC version, it's like I imagine there's some better quality of life in it. I'm gonna guess. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna guess for PC 55 and 64 38.
Okay, I'm gonna guess PC version 36 and 64 version 24.
That's harsh. Matt was actually pretty close. We've got 54.08 for PC.
Wow, you were
I
real
was
close.
very
Yeah.
close. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at guessing these.
And
yeah.
42.34 for the
Okay, so
N64.
and I said 38. I was actually
yeah,
very close.
I
Oh
was,
my
I was
God.
so shocked.
Man.
Placing it towards the very bottom of that library. I think the only games lower on the N64 are like that Powerpuff Girls game, Carmageddon 64 was trash.
Wait, do you have the rating for the Game Boy Color version?
So we'll get into that, which is very funny.
We'll play that game when we get there.
I think it's in like the 70s or something.
Oh, you ruined the game.
I was gonna say.
No, I don't know. I mean, like there wasn't enough to have a. There weren't enough reviews collected.
Gotcha.
But
I was gonna say it strikes me that like because it is more like the scope was smaller and it was also a Zelda,
I know for a fact
Yeah.
that it is the best rated
It
version
is.
of Diakatana.
Yeah. I think that's they're around like the 7 range,
yeah.
but they in the red,
Yeah.
regardless of PC or N64. It ain't good. For the PC, it's I think there's a 3.7 from GameSpot, 4 from IGN, Joystick and Edge magazine, a 3.87 out of 10 from EGM, a 5 from Eurogamer, 5.6 from Nintendo Power for the N64 one. Moving on up a little, a C from Game Revolution, D from Entertainment Weekly, 53 from PC Gamer, 74 from GameSpy, and a 77 from GameFan. So that's
Okay.
as high as it goes. Some aspects received a positive shout out, mostly just to the music, which has to be different for
It's gotta
platform
be
because
the-
that makes
yeah.
no fucking sense.
Yeah.
Whatever reason. So, and the uniqueness of the guns, and I'll admit that,
I
like
will-
tridents and shit.
I
like,
will
that's-
actually say
yeah.
the one distinguishing feature is that I think even the most basic gun is not like a pistol. It's like a
it's like an
plasma.
arm launcher plasma gun. or
Yeah, no,
something.
I will admit that they did try their best with the unique
Yeah.
weaponry. Okay, so here's the other issue with that though. Because we use codes to get later in the game.
Yeah.
When you have 6 guns that are all sci-fi weapons, you can't remember is this the plasma grenade one
Yeah.
that's gonna kill me, or is this the trident one?
And I-
It's
and
very hard to
don't know
tell.
if there's ammo for all of them throughout the game either.
Yeah,
So that
and
might
it's like-
break it.
It's
All
like
right.
you know what a rocket launcher does. It's like, but what is a globule
Yeah.
lobber do? Like, what the fuck is that?
I
Yeah.
want to do something.
Okay.
I went on YouTube and I found the N64 intro and also the PC intro.
Okay.
And we're
Okay.
gonna react to them live.
Well,
We'll play N64 first because we know.
We
how
already
that
know
sounds.
what that one's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna.
All right.
Is this the PC one then?
No, this is N64.
Yeah, you remember that jingle.
This is the thing that plays over the opening cutscene.
Oh, the opening cutscene.
Oh, I thought it was the. Well, I think those are the only 2 themes, and then there's
Yeah.
like a battle one.
Yeah.
That also sounds
Yeah.
like shit.
That was the only one I could find for N64.
All right.
Also, my phone cut that off.
That's fine. We know what that's like. Wow.
This is PC.
Okay. That's significantly different.
Wow.
Fair enough. So they just have no idea how to use the N64's sound chip, or like what?
I guess.
You think about what, Mario and Zelda and GoldenEye are doing on there. Those are bops.
Let's skip ahead a
they
little
didn't
bit.
have the Buck Bumble guys. They need some help from them. Okay.
There you go. That's it. Okay,
Yeah.
so Randy, I'm gonna
Still not not incredible, but that's certainly compared
Okay,
to.
I'm gonna answer your question. I would say either one, they did not have time to figure it out, or
Yeah.
I think, as what Austin said, they just didn't care anymore.
It's
they
funny,
just needed a way. They
It's
just
like
needed,
they demade the song just to get it on. Like, yeah.
I think-
quick and dirty.
Yeah.
Like I said.
I think demaking it is. I think giving them too much credit. I think they just tried. I think they tried to find a MIDI soundtrack that would fit onto the
Yeah.
cart
Yeah.
after that, and then just put that in. I don't think they put any effort into demaking
Yeah.
it. I think they just found something to fill the silence.
But clearly these targets weren't what they were aiming for, or shooting for, fragging for.
Which
Sorry.
okay.
But it was mediocre to scathing, echoing pretty much what we conveyed. It was slow, boring, unforgiving. The controls were unresponsive, the underwhelming graphics and blurry textures, the gameplay unexciting, the lack of simple saves, the
yeah.
dumbass artificial intelligence, the absolute piss sound, the bugs and glitches, and even causing hard crashes on the computer with a few of them. Its grand narrative was mostly just confusing, while its online deathmatches were wholly unremarkable in comparison to its contemporaries like Quake and Unreal and shit. What I did find comical, though, was that a fair amount of the criticism on PC came from, came from the low-tier vocal performances, and most importantly, the use of their sidekick system. Something we didn't have to worry about with our experience with the N64.
My God.
But apparently that shit on computer was fucking crazy frustrating. It was super
how
your partners would get caught on the geometry constantly, or just stand around and die, granting you with an instant game over. Because if they die, you're done. And I remember people saying that doors could kill them when they opened and closed. It's like they would just get squished while following you. So
how could we forget?
We lucked out there.
How could we forget to bring up? Yes, one of the worst parts of it is the fact that most of the game was an escort quest of very fragile NPCs that would insta-fail the mission. And we played this, and it's like, it would send you back to the beginning of the mission. Yep. There was no checkpoint.
You have 40 minutes in, and then your dude would, step on a mine, and then it'd be that's it.
Yep.
That NPC has a name, and it's Superfly Johnson.
Superfly Johnson. I thought it was Superfly Jones.
Is it Superfly Jones?
I don't. It might be Superfly Johnson.
It's Superfly. That's the important part.
But he's not the only NPC that joins
Yeah, there's a few of them.
No,
So
I
I forgot.
know.
And so was the escort part stripped out in the N64?
Yeah, entirely.
Yep.
That was probably a blessing.
I was going to say it's preferable just go through those levels alone. Because it's the same maps.
That was notorious in those games for being one of the worst parts
so much
of
that
it.
people modded them out.
Yes.
So,
Yes. So much the fact that it's like people to this day still remember just cursing the name Superfly Johnson or Jones.
I wonder what the
Superfly Johnson.
It is Johnson.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder what speedruns look like for this.
Also, so I remember trying to read the plot of Diakatana. Read the Wikipedia article. It is, even with a summary from Wikipedia, it is impossible to figure out what the fuck the
fuck's
story.
going on?
Yeah, it's all this time travel and jumping around that is, by the way, conveyed in game, but again by just text over top, squiggling 3D models. It's like wiggling 3D models. Like it's such a bad story. Yeah, I will actively say I think that story is very
sucks.
poorly written.
Other factors included the expectation from the lengthy development and the bigwigs involved, the many PR debacles, and stiff competition of Quake 3 Arena and Unreal Tournament, like I said, far superior products in the same class that it was up against. Halo was set to arrive only a year later, for example. That's just one, but it's like, think about, how, if you play a game from 2022 and 2023, probably doesn't feel that,
I mean, but people are still playing games in 2024
of
from
course.
2017.
But it's like, can you imagine just going from Daikatana to Halo, in that span? Like,
I can imagine it. It's quite the leap.
It's one of those things where it's like, and I suppose it's like, perhaps maybe game design and game development has benefited from this. It's just like, this was an era where the leaps in technology, year by year,
that's
year
very
by
true.
year it was different. I mean, look at just as a quick anecdote, this is also the same. This is the same week that we finally got the Sega CD32X hooked up. I got the Tower of Power hooked up, and we played it. And it's like this. You needed all this hardware to achieve what end? Because that was 93, and then in 96 you just had the Nintendo 64 with actual 3D.
Yeah,
it's like 3 years back then made a huge difference.
It totally
a massive difference.
And you were taking bets on what the future was going to be.
Yes.
It's like FMV seemed probably like next generation before polygons. But
if you're more interested in discussion of Sega CD32X, we did our Night Trap episode.
Oh yes,
that's another plug into this.
We also did an episode on Sega.
That's true.
Man, all we need to do is we just every time
gotta create that chart of everything just circling.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of your topics too. We have not mentioned the ESRB creation and the Senate hearing, which always
for once,
for once is like and
he said mature at one point.
Yeah, that wrapped around with Doom. So what is it? The online player base quickly dwindled, unsurprisingly. Computer Gaming World granted it with its Worst Game of 2000 award. Game Trailers ranked it as the second most disappointing title of the decade, right behind Star Wars Galaxies, which, I don't know, this was worse if you ask me. But the Games Radar inserted it on their list of the crummiest games of all time. Now, now, in case, I'm sure it still frequents those. But now, in case you were outside the US of A, that Game Boy Color entry fared leagues better with critics. It was by no means fantastic, but I saw that it remained a drastic improvement in terms of the structure, puzzle solving, and moment-to-moment action. or I guess superior compared to the original, which is just.
You know what? Actually, I was gonna say it's we had seen a disaster like this before. Probably not in this scale, but I feel like E.T. was like the first.
Oh,
really...
yeah, but that was an industry wide, like
I know, but I was thinking it was
like,
was this the first really big, like humors? I mean, you could also say like the
Yeah, and I don't know what the expectation was for E.T. It was just carryover from the movie success.
I was gonna say E.T. is different because E.T. the game was bad. But that game was also made in like a week or something.
Yeah, and it was
30 days.
E.T. was the catalyst of a larger issue.
It was, but that was also like that was them ordering too many cartridges because of how popular the movie was.
Yeah,
right.
You know what I mean?
More cartridges than.
But
there
I think
were
you're right, and that's I think that's probably the only other example of people calling a game a bomb, because it's like. When you think about money getting lost, when bad games happened throughout, like in the 90s, sure, but it's like you weren't like that's going to tank a company,
Yeah.
But,
I mean, you guys have talked about many of these on the show. I mean, I think this early. No, I think there were plenty later to come.
Oh,
many you have all discussed
for sure.
many times over.
But speaking of returning back to Ion Storm, Romero did acknowledge the mishap while also stating that the hype was partially responsible, except it wasn't all rain clouds. The Austin office's release of Deus Ex that same year was met with loads of love from reviewers and gamers and Andrews alike. Elsewhere, the aforementioned Tom Hall joint, the Anachronics, was set to launch in summer of 2001, a, quote, sprawling sci-fi comedy modeled in the style of a JRPG, taking inspiration from film noir to Ender's Game to the animations of Chuck Jones.
Well, that's an interesting
assortment
mixture,
of but apparently he was a big fan of Chrono Trigger and wished to give it a novel spin on that. And similar to Diakatana, there also was that engine swap from Quake 1 to Quake 2. A large portion of development came from its 400-page design doc and script, accumulating to a 60-hour single-player mode. This after a 15-man team came to the conclusion that the content had to be trimmed by half.
This was for
Anachronics.
Anachronic. I had never heard of Anachronics.
There was another team within Iron Storm that was making this.
So, and out of curiosity, so we still have not hit the Deus Ex came out in 2000, correct?
Yeah. He just said that.
Okay, I was gonna say it's like that is one big because Deus Ex is fondly remembered today.
The only reason I'm not like fixed on that is that could be its own larger thing, but also that wasn't at the same building. That was over at.
That was the satellite office.
That was that I knew there, but I just wanted to I find it interesting because it's like okay, at least Ion Storm had one massive win to it, but it's like you're right, it was a satellite office. So
yeah, I mean the satellite office became Warren Spector's essentially because they did Deus Ex, and I believe Ion Storm's name is also on Invisible War and also on Thief Deadly Shadows.
Correct.
As well.
Yes.
So
and spoiler, you know that this penthouse building is not going to be around for much longer.
Yeah.
But there were technical troubles, delays with Anachronics. So many people leaving the companies certainly didn't help either back at the home base. But you know what? They got it done. That June on the 27th, Anachronics was here and nearly doubled DICE scores. A respectable 77 on Metacritic and an 80 on Game Rankings. It was tougher to achieve back then. With outlets praising the hell out of its writing, characters, and plot, to the degree that its story director, Jake Hudges, won an award when splicing together footage of gameplay with cutscenes to create a feature-length machinima movie. Commercially, however, it was a separate tale. Hall claims that there wasn't much of a marketing push for it, which I sort of believe since I didn't even hear of this thing until researching this.
I'd never heard of it.
He thanked Eidos for their support, but claimed that the $50,000 invested into promotions wasn't enough, following its millions of dollars in cost of production.
I was going to say, again, $50,000 in marketing is
no,
not
that's what
a
he said.
lot
This was
of
for
money.
5 ads in magazines, and that was
I was going to say...
That's what he said.
No, I was going to say $50,000 is just like, that's not a marketing budget. That's one person's salary.
Yeah. So, according to Galbert, the reasons as to why the publisher spent what they did was due to them missing its designated date windows. But with that, we now have 2 bombs out of the Dallas crew. And not to understate it, like I mean, even if Anachronics killed it, like they were through regardless. Like there was just too much cash down the drain at this point.
I don't understand. For all of this money that this company had thrown at it, it's like, why are the budgets for these? And it's like, listen, I get that it's just like, if you don't have high hopes for something, but it's like, you can put more than $50,000 into
advertising,
into advertising, or to polish up a game. It's like, listen, maybe you don't think that it's going to make a lot of money, but it's like you can invest in these, because if your big things fail, small things, help. They can help shore up the losses. Yeah, that's really bad. And that's terrible management.
A mere 2 weeks after that game getting out, Anachronics, Eidos announced that they were shuttering Iron Storm's main headquarters permanently.
Ion Storm. Yeah. Oh god. No, it's okay.
Stupid.
Which is I mean, good on them, because Eidos says, they made a lot of great games. It's like, don't get dragged down, even though,
Well, a couple did hang behind to issue patches for both of their titles off the clock and without pay. That's generous. And there was also a special gift to his closest defenders. Romero handed out Diakatana's source code to a small community surrounding it, which was rad of him. Yeah. This and before, his and Tom's leaving in July, which those dedicated could build ports, create fixes, make content updates of their own, which some actually did for over a decade. That's how they have the multiplayer.
I think it's interesting because it's like throughout the development, we talk a lot about these people like Wilson and Flaherty and all these, a lot of executives. And it's just like, I wish I could sit in a room with Romero and just be like, what were your feelings towards it? What was your feelings towards it during the middle of development and towards the end of development?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it seems like a Romero thing, like a very punk thing to do, to just be like, here's the source.
And
code.
Remember, he was fairly young. Yeah. Here you go. Shit. In 2016, there were fans that put out a patch, one that added widescreen HD resolutions, faster loading screens, and, as we mentioned earlier, the ability to turn off Sidekick. So, goodbye, Superfly.
Yeah. I looked into the story behind that patch, and apparently he gave them the source code, but the source code was corrupt.
Oh shit! Really?
So the reason it's 2016 is because they had to decompile the game.
Oh my gosh!
Wow,
that's how dedicated these people were to this.
You know what,
man? It's crazy.
I'm sure there's got to be interviews with Romero where he does do an in-depth. He does an in-depth what was it like?
I think enough time has gone by for those wounds to have healed, because I think it was a rough subject to.
Well, you said all those people left and he was hurt.
Yeah,
and it's just yes, it probably is a rough subject.
It was not what he thought was,
And also, it's just listen, it was probably a humbling experience too. No one wants to admit that it was just
that as well, which will be clear going towards the end of this chapter. But the Austin studio did stay open for longer, as we said, since they were contractually obligated to finish Deus Ex: Invisible War and Thief Deadly Shadows, which tragically both saw high reviews and sales, along with prestigious awards. But it was too late to make the comeback, regardless. Yeah.
Don't worry, War Inspector went on to be fine.
Yeah, and by 2004, Spectre and a sizable chunk of the senior staff were gone, and on February 9th, 2005, Eidos revealed the closure of their division as well, making Ion Storm definitively no more. Many of the alumni do look back fondly of the days there.
Yeah.
Romero commented on Diakatana serving as the catalyst for the end of their venture. Many of the alumni do look back fondly of the days there. Romero commented on Diakatana serving as the signal for the end of their venture. Quote, "It was a tremendous learning experience. It was far from perfect, but ultimately making games isn't always about having crazy success. Sometimes games and companies don't turn out to be what you hope they will be, and you got to do the best you can." So, kind of sweet and sincere, honestly.
That is kind of the post-mortem on it, his thoughts on it. That's pretty much what I was looking for.
Yeah. So, and others repeated the sheer hubris and vanity as the smoking gun for their collapse, and that's happened before and will again, as we here have noticed.
Yeah.
An exhaustive retrospective on Ion Storm from PC Gamer was written in June of 2020, where I got tons of valuable info.
That's really cool.
They wrote, quote, "2 decades on, it's a story that's still clouded and contentious in parts, with very different perspectives from some of the industry's strongest personalities."
Yeah.
I wonder if there'll be any comments on this in FPS when we get around to watching that.
I think that is
probably.
Yeah. And it's you're right. It is contentious because John Romero, it's just I just saw him. He did a stream where he played myhouse.wad.
Yes, I saw that too.
Which was very interesting.
Doom 2,
he seemed he seemed super chill. He also seemed to recognize, he was commenting on the tricks they used to pull it off. And he was like, "Oh, they did this, and that's cool that they used this." It's like, so he's obviously still very intimately familiar with the engine that he built. He was impressed. He was like, "Oh," he's kind of, you could kind of tell that he was like, "Oh, what's going on?"
Dude,
here?
I watched that thing. It's sick nasty. I was like, when like the reporting was going around about it, I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I saw like some video of it, and I was like, this goes places.
And
Like,
people like, for example, it's hard to point at a bad guy at this. Also, it's like you said, Mike Wilson seems like he's an obvious culprit, but he became a founder of digital Devolver Digital, and it's just like, okay, well, clearly,
nobody left the industry. These guys are still out there.
They're still out there. So
it's funny because like you without the context of everything that happened from like 2005 onward, you would think that like John Romero's kind of a dick, and like John Carmack is the this like just this little nerdy programmer guy. Yeah. But like history has flipped that now because John Carmack is like a ruthless businessman now. Like he's competing in the space race with like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And
wow.
He like worked at Oculus for a while and still works there. So he works for Facebook technically. And meanwhile, John Romero is just like, I made another Doom WAD in 2020.
You're right. Yeah, I think if you would have asked me my impressions of these people 10 years ago, it would be very different, than kind of how I feel about them now.
Yeah, not that John Carmack is a bad guy.
No, that's not what you're saying. It's more their philosophies and how they view themselves and like their place in the industry.
Yeah, you would think,
and the way they communicate with their fans and whatnot.
You would think that John Carmack would be the reserved one, and John Romero would be the crazy millionaire, and it's flipped that on its head.
Like I know John Romero still takes like almost any interview he'll talk. Yeah, like he's very candid about his career in a way that I find endearing.
Him and his wife started a new studio.
Yes, I actually was just about to get to that. Yeah. They also pointed out that their catalog did have a pair of revered inclusions on it. Deus Ex alone more or less fulfilled the promises from when they opened. It was the immersive sim whose DNA can still be found in numerous titles today. They even removed from its expansions and sequels. Basically everything from Arcane now, like your Dishonored and Deathloop.
Like you said, Deus Ex can be its own episode, but the story of Deus Ex is so interesting because Warren Spector made Thief and at Looking Glass, and like Looking Glass was basically he started working on Deus Ex and then they were just like, this is going to cost too much money, it's not viable. They fired him, and then John Romero used his immense amounts of funding to just, he was like, you're fucking Warren Spector, make whatever game you want. and the Deus Ex popped out of that. Yeah. So it's like the hubris of Diakatana is obvious, but also that hubris and that
can
just
sometimes work.
That will to just throw money at something gave us one of the most like definitively influential games of all time.
That's like Kojima's now.
I was about to say Kojima.
That is that was what Sony did, and that's how Death Stranding got made. Was like, all right, we trust. Like, here's all the dollars, and spin something out of it, and then he makes a crazy, insane thing, and
Which again, it's just like it's hard to disentangle in this story. Like obviously, it's like I think the vanity was a big red flag, but underneath it all, as long as the people who are making the game are so passionate about making the game, they can make a good game. And so it's like, what happened? Like, why did the game turn out badly? Aside from the mismanagement and the PR stuff, it's just like, what happened to the money that went into the development of the game? And I'm like, I'm curious. I'm like, what?
I think a lot of this just got away from them. It's like, it's a thing, like, because like you said, technology advanced so, like, game development in that era was just like rocket speed, and it's like they were taking too long and were unfocused, and then it's like I said, by the time everybody blinked, it was 4 years later, and there was like,
you know what?
What are you gonna do?
That's actually a good way to put it. I think you're right. It got away from it. I think really it's just like maybe really the thing that doomed it was that ad. Like, why would you brag about a game that's not made yet?
It set the tone.
Yeah. And it's like, listen, make that ad, because then they spent the next 4 years, it sounds like, trying to control the story, the narrative around this game when they should have been just focusing on making the game itself. It's like, ready, put the narrative out there once the game is done, and then
I want to frame that ad. So some of the developers continued to be good friends as well. Several went on to become employed for other notable gaming teams. The Austin site specifically saw bleed over to the Midway division in the area. We covered that. Go listen. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Jeez, so many.
I think I wrote this before that episode, so I was like, oh fuck. Not only that, they didn't come with their own baggage beforehand too. Quote, both companies held design as a talisman and found themselves marred in technological problems.
And at that company, design is law.
So Dallas was demonized while Austin was evangelized, and yet both suffered from personality clashes, management foul-ups, and an inflated sense of self-worth. But yeah, the key difference was just the final products, really.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Like, it can go this way, it can go that way. Sorry, I'm still thinking about that, like getting in that ad and hanging it up in our studio somewhere. But
it's got to be out there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Somebody has to have those issues.
I've seen people sell prints of old video game ads.
Yes,
on eBay.
So if you're wondering about John Romero, well, he and Hall founded Monkey Stone Games in July of 2001. Not wasting any time. Their bread and butter were mobile stuff. They were mentioned in the N-Gage episode with their fart butt downgrade of Red Faction.
Oh yeah,
that was them.
That was them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's very uncomfortable because obviously, like, right on the cusp of all this, like, crashing was when John Romero was on stage at E3 showing like Red Faction on the N-Gage, and he's clearly like distracted and not there. Like, he doesn't want to be there making this, and it's like
also yet another.
I know
disaster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the duo stepped away in 2003 before the studio went defunct in January of 2005 and joined Midway, as was the tradition. That October, he was promoted to project lead on Gauntlet 7 Sorrows.
Oh, no.
Come on, dude.
I know. So
I feel bad for him now.
Something he was not part of by its completion, as he quit towards the end of June 2005. But he then moved to San Francisco and opened up a new company called Slipgate Ironworks with the announcement of an MMO that didn't happen. They were acquired by Gazillion Entertainment in 2009, the Marvel Heroes guys, who are also dead and buried as of, 2017? I don't know.
Yeah.
He soon became chairman of the board for the Cyber Athlete Professional League. December of 2006, he revealed a first-person shooter by the name of Severity. This in collaboration with Ritual Entertainment's Tom Mustaine and Bethesda Austin, formerly Escalation Studios. It was canned when they couldn't find a publisher. In November 2010, he and his wife Brenda formed Loot Drop, who would specialize in, quote, social games. Tom Hall even came on board a year later, but then they went under in 2012 after encountering financial difficulties.
I just want to ready.
Can anything go ass up here? Or
I
what?
I just want to go back in time to 2012 and just give him a hug.
He needs a hug. I know.
I was like, I feel it's like, listen. It's like vanity of Diakatana aside. It's like, dude, that is.
He's already paid for that.
I was gonna say, dude, one punishment after the next. So wait, we said Red Faction.
No, it's going to keep going.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so that March, Romero took the role of an editor for Retro Gamer, April of 2016. April of 2016 is when he announced a partnership with his old buddy, Adrian Carmack, the other Carmack.
Yeah. I was going to ask what happened to Carmack, too.
To make another FPS entitled Black Room. They sought $700K in funding via Kickstarter. The campaign was canceled in 4 days. So this dude can't catch a break.
So why was the campaign canceled?
I just didn't make enough money.
Yeah, the money wasn't going their way. I think they preemptively closed it when they saw. Because most times you get the bulk of your funding like pretty soon after.
Very quickly after you open it up. Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, him and his significant other took another swing and established Romero Games. That was in August 2015. And you know what? Still around.
Okay.
He finally did it. 9th time's the charm. They operate out of Galloway, Ireland, I guess when becoming through with these damned American cities, and have successfully released 4 things with an upcoming 5th on the way. Gunman Taco Truck in 2017, a roguelike indie for phones. Sigil in 2019, a mod meant to be the unofficial 5th episode of the OG Doom, truly full circle.
Okay.
I recall Buckethead being the credited composer for for their soundtrack. Then that Empire of Sin game was them a year later in 2020, with Brenda taking the director's chair, if I'm not mistaken. A mobster strategy RPG distributed by Paradox Interactive.
Okay.
And now concluding with August of 2021, he told the press he was actively working on Sigil 2. And if this pack of levels set to run atop of Doom 2, so stay tuned for that if it suits your flavor. Or wait, no, hold on. That came out on December 10th, 2023.
Yeah,
Doom's
came out
30th
recently,
anniversary.
yeah.
Okay, I wrote this before.
Okay. Sorry, which show was it?
Sigil 2.
Sigil 2, which is like his Doom wads, yeah.
Yeah.
The final tidbit of news I have on them here is that on January 19th, 2022, Romero tweeted out that him and his company were getting back into the first-person shooter business, well, like original, with an as of now unnamed original IP. That's what I mean, not like built off of Doom or anything. But the undertaking is gearing to be a larger scale and scope. They're going to be using the recent Unreal 5 for their engine, and they are hiring. So, like, apply today. My sincerest best of luck on their expansion. Hopefully this thing is great. He is due for that triumphant return. Yeah. And how much of a redemption arc would it be if he came back with this awesome new shooter?
That's like ready.
I am rooting for him. Like,
we need Shooter Jesus.
Yes, we do need Shooter Jesus, especially right now.
In a world full of live service shit.
That's the other thing I should specify. This is a campaign, like a single player.
Yeah, where everybody's canceling first person shooter campaigns and shit. We need live shooter or first person shooter Jesus.
So Godspeed.
You know what? I agree. That's like John. It's like there's a lot of mistakes that went into Diakatana, but it's like that was just like this brutal how that went after that.
Like I said, it was so long ago. At this point, it's like he needs something to move. Was just so far.
And it's like you can tell. It's like dude, he's still interested. He's still trying, but it's like well, a lot of those games, obviously, he joined those teams, and it's like, how could he have known that it's just like so many of these, like just oh god,
that was some rotten luck. I think.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think he had any stock in it even after he left?
Probably.
Because I was gonna say when Bethesda bought id, and then Microsoft bought Bethesda,
right.
I wonder if he got any kickback from that.
Oh, that's a good point.
That happened around 2015 when he formed the studio.
No, you're right. And I wonder if it would be easier for him to get those resources too.
Yeah.
Like, where it's just like, if this game is going to be a partnership with Xbox or something. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
But with this, the train has reached the last of the stations for today. The person, the game, the company, the legacy. A fascinating subject, rich with the baloney that Hot Button so desperately craves.
Yeah.
Over ambitions, absurd business decisions, a strange and bungled piece of history that only now exists as a largely forgotten novelty.
I would say it's just yet another milestone, and like you said, the video game disasters anthology.
But it's funny, if he's like coming, because he's been working on small scale stuff for years, and it's like now I do wonder about that though, if he gets those residuals. But thank you both, thank you listeners. Thank you to my sources, the Dallas Observer, Rick Lane at PC Gamer, that book Masters of Doom, How Two Guys Created an Empire and Transformed Pop Culture by David Kushner. I wish that title was less wordy. Moby Games, of course, that their offering was expansive. I had seriously had to cut a lot for this. We'd never leave the room if I wanted to cover the entirety of what went down behind, Deus Ex and Thief at the Austin Center. But Looking Glass Studios in general. But maybe in the future, we'll see. And if you're into weird stories of shooters cut from the same ilk, or cloth, they've got more of those for you. So check out our deep dives on Prey and Duke Nukem Forever, and lots of crossover featuring a handful of the same faces you'd recognize from this.
Halo and Half-Life that you mentioned.
Yeah, Halo and Half-Life.
But we could make our own FPS documentary.
Yeah, right. But let's do plugs. I'm tired.
Okay.
Don't play Diakatana. It's on Steam. You said $6.
I think
Don't
it's still.
do it.
I don't think that's worth it to
and
buy it now.
It's the fucking N64 card is way more. I think it's floating around $100+ for you collectors, and not including the box and manual.
Yeah, that strikes me as one of those. You're right, because it's
And-
rare.
And I can tell you that the Game Boy Color version is more than that.
Is it really?
Because it's Europe only,
Fuck.
and it didn't sell that well.
Yeah,
so
I guess that makes
But
sense.
it scored okay.
it did.
Yeah.
And our Game of the Year deliberations have been posted.
Yes.
So give them a listen. You can hear me say blasphemous shit like how RE4 isn't my favorite in the series. Trust me, I know it's one of the most influential and impactful releases ever. I'm not a lunatic. But, it's just setting the stage for what's to come. But it was a good time. And it was fun. Not as long as it could have been in previous years. So don't get scared away.
It's only like
2 days.
7 hours long.
Yeah, you mixed it.
Yeah.
Do you know? Do you guys know we never once mentioned Armored Core 6 or Pikmin 4?
That was by design.
Yeah.
Well,
I played both of them.
Okay.
I was gonna say
I
it's
wanted
like,
to play Armored Core 6. People are gonna think less of us as professionals.
I don't know. No, if you're hearing this, I played both of them. They weren't mentioned for a reason.
All right. Well, we know they didn't win.
Yeah.
That's
guys,
the
we are the kingmakers of this industry.
Mhm,
okay,
I'm still waiting for the checks
speak up. Yeah.
from the winner.
If it makes you guys feel any better, you guys put way more research into all your topics than most professionals anyway.
Yeah.
So
Damn right.
yeah.
Sorry, I meant to hand the ball off to you like 5 minutes ago. But do your thing.
Thank you for listening. You can find all of the episodes we mentioned. There's like 10 of them, I think.
Yeah.
At hotbuttoncast.com.
Oh, for the music, are you gonna close us out or open us with the N64 one and then inverse it? It's like
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'll close with the. I gotta open with the worst one.
Yeah.
Right. I'll close with the good one.
All right.
And yeah, we
Well,
we
you hear
have
it
more
anyway.
episodes to come in the future, so keep your eyes peeled to our socials, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HotButtonCast.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier in the episode, I think did I say that John Adams and Thomas Jefferson died in 1926? It's 1826. Yeah.
You've been thinking about this whole
All right,
time.
well, we just got our correction in, so we don't have to come back next time.
Well, I just thought of it. I was like, people know what I'm talking about, right? I'm like, maybe I'll just mention it.
Oh my God, we're
No,
definitely
I'm gonna
leaving it on that. 'cause
I'm gonna
this-
drag you into the update episode so you can talk about John Adams.
This is why you have me on this show,
Yeah.
because only I would say this.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.